The car had gone off the road and landed in a ditch. At first, it was quiet, but then smoke began to rise. Inside, a woman wasn't moving. Her husband stood outside, simply watching. He didn't call for help. Malcolm John Webster was born on April 18, 1959, in Wandsworth, Greater London. On the surface, his background appeared stable, even enviable. His father, Alexander Robertson Webster, held a high-ranking position within the Metropolitan Police, serving as a detective chief superintendent in the fraud squad. His mother, Odette Blewett, had once worked as a nurse, but gave up her profession to raise their children behind closed doors. However, the family home was governed by unrelenting discipline and an unsettling set of rules. Alexander ran the household with absolute control. When he used the bathroom, everyone else had to vacate the house. Meals were taken in silence unless he initiated a conversation. Emotional warmth was rare, and affection was nearly absent. Major family decisions, including financial matters, were handled solely by Alexander. From an early age, Malcolm displayed troubling signs. While his twin sister, Caroline, easily made friends, Malcolm struggled to connect, but rather than withdraw quietly, he developed unusual ways of attracting attention. He began pretending to faint, often collapsing at convenient moments to avoid chores or responsibilities. His apparent health issues led to speculative diagnoses, ranging from asthma to epilepsy. Yet, no solid medical explanation was ever confirmed. Doctors prescribed medications based on symptoms, never seeking a definitive cause. As sympathy began to fade, Malcolm escalated his attention-seeking behavior. He became fascinated with fire, setting small blazes in school and earning the nickname Pyro from classmates. Though these incidents never resulted in formal charges, they left other parents uneasy. Children were warned to stay away from him, and isolation became his norm. At home, comparisons with his more sociable sister only deepened his resentment. His parents, hoping to give him a fresh start, enrolled him in a private boys' school. Initially, Malcolm appeared to flourish. He joined the drama club, improved his grades, and reinvented himself. He claimed his family was wealthy and well-connected, but his lies eventually caught up with him, and once again, trust in him eroded. At 15, Malcolm was pulled out of school. He didn't resist. Education no longer interested him. He wanted independence and income. In his early career, he struggled to find work he enjoyed. He drifted from job to job, including garbage collection, fruit picking, and retail. But none of these roles gave him a sense of purpose or satisfaction. At 17, guided by his mother, Malcolm began training as a nurse. Surprisingly, he thrived and began a serious relationship, which ended suddenly due to a terminated pregnancy and the resulting emotional distress. However, Malcolm persevered. When he was 30, Malcolm worked in Tawam Hospital, on the children's ward in Abu Dhabi, UAE. It was here that his criminal tendencies surfaced. Trusted by elderly residents, he volunteered to manage their finances, only to siphon off their savings for personal luxuries, including rounds of drinks and expensive golf equipment. When that scam lost steam, he shifted tactics. He started targeting older, wealthier women. His charm was disarming, and his lies were convincing. Posing as a struggling young man with tales of hardship, he extracted money and gifts with calculated precision. In the late 1980s, within months, 3 children with special needs died under his care. Each suffered sudden cardiac arrests. There were no signs of illness beforehand, no medical warning signs. Though no autopsies were conducted, whispers began circulating among the staff. But in a region where autopsies were culturally discouraged, no investigations followed. Malcolm simply left the country without consequences. Back in the UK, he resumed his life as though nothing had happened. He found work as a nurse and began cultivating his social image once more. At a party, he met a woman named Clare Morris. She was born on December 26, 1961, just 2 years after Malcolm. She grew up in a secure, affluent household and had a younger brother named Peter Morris. Clare was the kind of person who lit up a room, outgoing, confident, and full of energy. She was popular because of her lively personality. One evening, she met Malcolm at a party, and he was immediately drawn to her charm. Clare represented everything he admired: warmth, vitality, and a strong sense of self. The two struck up a conversation and quickly began spending time together. On the surface, their relationship progressed naturally, but beneath the surface, doubts quietly stirred. Clare's mother, Betty Morris, had reservations from the beginning. There was something about Malcolm that didn't sit right with her. Though she couldn't quite articulate it, her instincts whispered caution. Peter, on the other hand, initially welcomed Malcolm into the family, finding him clever and polite, perhaps a bit of a rogue, but nothing more. From Malcolm's perspective, Clare was radiant. His twin sister Caroline described Clare as generous and kind-hearted, someone who brought genuine happiness into her brother's life. Even Odette, Malcolm's emotionally distant mother, spoke positively of her. For once, it seemed Malcolm had found a partner who might steer his life in the right direction. They married on September 3rd, 1993. The ceremony was beautiful. Clare looked radiant, and Malcolm performed his role to perfection. The devoted husband, charming and attentive. Friends and family left the celebration believing they had a bright future ahead of them. Young, in love, and financially stable, everything appeared idyllic. But everything changed just 9 months later. On May 27, 1994, tragedy struck. Malcolm and Clare had been driving along a quiet rural road, with Malcolm at the wheel and Clare beside him. According to his account, a motorcyclist suddenly appeared on the wrong side of the road, forcing him to swerve. He claimed to have overcorrected, sending the vehicle into a ditch. Moments later, the car burst into flames. Malcolm escaped. Clare did not. He was taken to hospital and kept under observation for a week. He complained of pain, appeared emotionally broken, and wore a neck brace. But scans and medical tests showed no significant injuries. There were no broken bones, no burns, and no smoke inhalation. His physical condition was inconsistent with the violent wreckage he described. At Clare's funeral, Malcolm appeared inconsolable, barely able to speak. Peter held his hand throughout the ceremony, unaware that the man he was comforting would later spend Clare's life insurance payout, £200,000, an enormous sum, in 1994 on a £30,000 yacht, a new Range Rover, and other lavish expenses. The money vanished quickly. Questions began to surface. Why hadn't Clare managed to escape the car, as Malcolm had investigators confirmed that while the car had veered off the road, the crash hadn't been severe. It wasn't traveling at high speed, and the damage didn't suggest a violent impact. The fire's origin remained unknown. Even more troubling was that when Malcolm phoned for help, he told dispatchers the vehicle was empty. Despite his wife being inside, he never mentioned Clare. Despite these troubling details, no formal charges were ever brought. The case was closed, and Malcolm's life continued undisturbed by suspicion. Behind the scenes, he had already moved on. Soon after Clare's death, Malcolm began a secret affair with Geraldine Oakley, a hospital IT manager. Publicly, he was a grieving widower trying to rebuild his life. Privately, Geraldine began noticing unusual behavior. Malcolm talked about Clare's death in unsettlingly clinical terms, often circling back to whether a second autopsy would be ordered. His cold fascination with the topic disturbed her deeply. Geraldine confided her concerns to a consultant pathologist. She feared there was more to Clare's death than anyone realized. Eventually, unable to reconcile her suspicions with their relationship, Geraldine walked away. Unfazed, Malcolm shifted locations once again. By 1995, he was living in Saudi Arabia. There, he connected with a woman named Brenda Grant over the phone. They eventually met in person a few times, but the friendship ended abruptly when, according to Brenda, Malcolm offered her illegal substances, an offer she firmly declined. After his stay in Saudi Arabia, Malcolm relocated once more, this time crossing hemispheres entirely and settling in New Zealand in the mid-1990s. No longer working as a nurse, he presented himself as a computer specialist. At a dinner party that month, he met Felicity, a bright, outgoing cancer nurse. She was intelligent, well-spoken, and 3 years younger than Malcolm. Her personality was magnetic, polished, lively, and full of warmth. For a man like Malcolm, she was the perfect mark. He played the role to perfection, attentive, affectionate, and emotionally present. To Felicity, he seemed sensitive and grounded, often speaking of life's fragility and how important it was not to waste time. Within months, they were inseparable. By January 1997, Malcolm had proposed. They married that April in Auckland, and for their honeymoon, they retreated to the idyllic Bay of Islands. But amid the calm beaches and scenic beauty, a far darker undercurrent began to emerge. Felicity later recounted one disturbing episode from the trip. She drank a cup of tea, prepared by Malcolm, and fell into a deep, unnatural sleep that lasted nearly 36 hours. It wasn't a one-off. In the months that followed, she experienced troubling health issues, double vision, unsteadiness, periods of confusion, and extended bouts of sleep, all suspiciously occurring after eating or drinking something provided by her husband. When she raised her concerns, Malcolm dismissed them as stress-related. Doctors were consulted, but none could pinpoint the cause. Tests showed abnormal liver function, usually associated with substance abuse or medication toxicity, neither of which applied to Felicity, who lived a healthy lifestyle. Still, Malcolm continued preparing all her meals, always at her side, always in control. Their home life soon took on a sinister pattern. Fires began to follow them. One broke out at Felicity's parents' house while the couple was staying there, another at a rental cottage, and a third at a property they were considering purchasing. These accidents left Felicity uneasy, but she brushed them off until Malcolm encouraged her to take out a life insurance policy. She agreed. In 1998, they welcomed a son. From the outside, it looked like a happy family. Malcolm was attentive, affectionate, and often seen doting on his child, but his affection masked a growing deception. In early 1999, Felicity and Malcolm planned to purchase a home in Auckland. Malcolm repeatedly stalled the payment, claiming the funds from a UK bank transfer hadn't cleared. As the February 12th deadline approached, the pressure mounted. That day, Malcolm and Felicity headed to the bank together. During the drive, Malcolm began complaining about the car's steering. Then, without warning, the vehicle veered across 2 lanes and slammed into a ditch. Felicity grabbed the wheel in panic and found it responsive. Nothing about the car's handling felt off. Malcolm got out of the car and asked her to stay put. However, she disobeyed and got out to call the bank, probably to reschedule their meeting. Just a week after the crash, Malcolm arranged a picnic in a remote area. During the drive, the couple argued, nothing major. Then, in an apparent peace offering, Malcolm handed her a bottle of water. Moments later, Felicity passed out. She awoke hours later in the passenger seat, disoriented and groggy. The car was now deep within a forest. Her phone rang. It was her father, worried after not hearing from her. When Malcolm returned to the car and saw her awake, he looked startled, alarmed even. He climbed into the car, tense, and asked how she had managed to regain consciousness. Felicity didn't know. Her head spun. Her memory was foggy, but one thing was clear. Something was terribly wrong. She demanded he take her home immediately. Back at the house, with her senses returning, she started asking questions. Why had they been in the middle of the forest? What had caused her to pass out? Malcolm dodged her inquiries. Then he suddenly clutched his chest and claimed he might be having a heart attack. He rushed off, allegedly heading to the hospital. Hours later, he returned with an astonishing announcement. Doctors had diagnosed him with leukemia, but this was no cry for help. It was a distraction. Felicity's father had already harbored suspicions about his son-in-law. After speaking to the family solicitor, Felicity's father began investigating Malcolm's finances. What he found changed everything. Together, father and daughter searched through Malcolm's belongings and discovered a key to a private mailbox. Inside were damning documents. A bank statement showed that Malcolm had secretly moved 140,000 New Zealand dollars from a joint account into a personal one in Aberdeenshire. Credit card bills revealed he was drowning in debt. Felicity's father took immediate action. securing a court injunction that legally barred Malcolm from the family home. By the time it was served, Malcolm had vanished. He fled New Zealand just as Felicity began to uncover the full scope of the betrayal. Medical tests later confirmed what she had feared. Her body contained dangerously high levels of sedatives, drugs she had never knowingly taken. Once Malcolm was gone, the symptoms vanished as if they'd never existed. The man she had loved, trusted, and married had slowly and methodically poisoned her. Her suspicions, once only instinct, had now hardened into certainty. While searching through their shared email account, Felicity uncovered damning messages to a UK estate agent. Malcolm had been posing as a single father, planning a quiet relocation to Cornwall with their son. He was arranging to move by the end of 1999. He arranged to move out at the end of 1999. Not a word of this was shared with Felicity. Then came a discovery that changed everything. In the boot of the car Malcolm had abandoned, she found a petrol canister. It was the final piece. A horrifying realization dawned. He had intended to replicate the exact circumstances of his first wife, Clare's death. The plan had almost succeeded until her father's well-timed phone call had inadvertently saved her life. Felicity now understood the forest, the unconsciousness, the steering failure, the sedatives. It had all been part of a carefully rehearsed script. She managed to confront Malcolm once. Calmly, she told him she knew what he had tried to do. His reply chilled her to the bone. "You would have died happy." That sentence shattered any lingering doubts. Malcolm hadn't just deceived and manipulated her. He had plotted her death with methodical precision. For Felicity, the illusion was destroyed. She now knew she had married a murderer. She went straight to the police. In July 2000, New Zealand authorities issued 4 arrest warrants against Malcolm Webster. The charges were severe, including arson, drugging his wife, and administering substances with intent to cause harm. But Malcolm was already gone, having fled the country before he could face justice. From that point on, he was officially a wanted man. As the investigation unfolded, more details emerged. Felicity had only been aware of one life insurance policy, but Malcolm had secretly forged 8 more, with a combined value nearing $2 million New Zealand dollars. His motivation had always been clear: control, deception, and financial gain, no matter the cost. What he did next was true to form. In 2000, Malcolm slipped back into the United Kingdom. He confessed nothing to his family and resumed life as if nothing had happened. He found work, played the role of a respectable man, and once again sought out wealthy women. In August 2004, he met Simone Banerjee at a hospital. He worked in nurse administration. She managed the surgical theater. The two soon became a couple. By 2006, they were engaged. To Simone, Malcolm was a sensitive soul. He shared stories about his supposed battle with leukemia, disappearing for hours and claiming he'd been undergoing treatment. He told her of his tragic past, including the accidental death of his first wife, Clare. He even claimed certain television scenes fires. Car crashes were too traumatic to watch. Simone believed him. She had no idea he was still legally married to Felicity Drum, or that he was a fugitive in New Zealand, or that he had already tried to murder 2 women. But police hadn't stopped tracking him and found him living openly in Aberdeen under his real name. Simone might never have learned the truth had authorities not contacted her directly, warning her of the grave danger she was in. At first, she refused to believe it, but when she confronted Malcolm, he turned pale, packed a bag, mumbled an apology, and walked out. Malcolm Webster was arrested in July 2007 in Scotland. The investigation, known as Operation Field, became an international effort involving over 1,000 witness interviews across multiple countries. Prosecutors charged him with the murder of Clare Morris, the attempted murder of Felicity Drum, and attempting to marry Simone Banerjee under false pretenses to gain access to her estate. As part of the reopened case, Clare's body was exhumed. Forensic analysis revealed that, like Felicity, she had been heavily sedated before her death. This confirmed what many had suspected. Clare hadn't been able to escape the burning car because Malcolm had drugged her, incapacitating her. It was also revealed that Felicity was drugged, even while she was pregnant with their son. The trial would go down in Scottish legal history. It became the longest trial involving a single defendant the country had ever seen. In May 2011, Malcolm Webster was found guilty on all charges. On July 5, 2011, he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 30 years. Simone later described herself as lucky to be alive. The courtroom testimonies painted a portrait of a man who used trust as a weapon, staging car crashes, setting fires, poisoning those closest to him, and weaving webs of lies for profit. Psychologists diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder, manipulative, deceitful, and utterly lacking in empathy. Even after his conviction, Malcolm refused to accept responsibility. In December 2013, he applied to the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission, hoping to have his sentence overturned. The process dragged on, but in February 2016, his request was officially rejected. The High Court saw no grounds for an appeal. After a comprehensive investigation into the events of Malcolm Webster's life, the authorities discovered that he had carried out a series of systematic and calculated crimes, mainly for financial gain, through fraud and murder. The investigation, known as Operation Field, spanned 5 years and involved interviews with more than 1,000 witnesses across several countries, revealing a terrifying pattern of manipulation. Malcolm poisoned his first wife, Clare Morris, with temazepam before staging a car crash in 1994 to collect $200,000 in insurance money, spending lavishly on a yacht and a Range Rover. He continued to poison his second wife, Felicity Drum, even when she was pregnant, and forged 9 insurance policies worth $750,000 while also setting 3 fires at her parents' home, a rented house, and a property he intended to buy. Authorities also discovered that Malcolm had attempted to enter into a sham marriage with Simone Banerjee to gain her wealth, with plans to drown her in a boat accident. He also had other relationships, including with Christina Willis, Anne Hancock, and a 15-year-old girl who ended up having an abortion, all of which he either deceived or exploited financially. In Abu Dhabi, Malcolm was suspected of injecting insulin to kill 3 children in his care, although evidence was lacking due to a culture that discouraged autopsies. He had lied about having cancer as a teenager, foreshadowing a decades-long scam. After his arrest in 2007, a search of Simone's home revealed stolen laptops and unlicensed guns. Malcolm was convicted in 2011 of murder, attempted murder, arson, burglary, fraud, poisoning, and attempted marriage fraud, removed from the nursing register in 2013, and attacked in prison, where he hired a hitman to protect him. These revelations exposed a manipulative psychopath diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder who showed no remorse even after being sentenced to life in prison. Malcolm Webster is currently serving his life sentence at a prison in Lanarkshire, Scotland.
Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jordan Worth. Alexander Skeel was born on August 17, 1995, in Kingston upon Hull. He grew up in a loving and supportive family. The boys spent their first months in the hospital in special rooms for premature babies, where they fought against very low body weight. Thankfully, with the help of skilled doctors, the children began to recover. However, Alexander's brother gained weight more quickly, and by their first birthday, he showed almost no signs of being premature. In contrast, Alexander was weaker and dealt with a condition called hydrocephalus, which is the excessive buildup of fluid in the brain, leading to him being classified as disabled. Despite these health challenges from birth, Alexander's intellectual growth was unaffected, and physically, he was similar to his classmates. He even participated actively in sports at school. Their parents adored their sons from a young age, showering them with love and care while investing time and money in their education and overall well-being. After graduating from high school, both brothers enrolled in the prestigious Bedford College to continue their studies. Alexander was intelligent, attractive, and made an effort to go to the gym regularly, which helped him gain attention from women. However, unlike his brother, who actively dated and had a vibrant social life, Alexander was shy and preferred to concentrate on his studies. In college, Alexander experienced love at first sight when he met a stunning girl named Jordan Worth. They were the same age, and Jordan came from a wealthy family. Growing up, she was used to getting what she wanted and rarely faced rejection. She always dressed elegantly, took great care of her appearance, and enjoyed a vibrant social life. Jordan was one of the most popular girls on campus and attracted the attention of many admirers. Besides her studies, she volunteered her time, raising funds and providing aid to local shelters for homeless animals as well as to children facing hunger in Africa. Jordan's efforts to make a positive impact were recognized multiple times. At first, her appeared to be an angel, kind, caring, smart, and beautiful. Alexander fell in love with her instantly but assumed that the outgoing and popular Jordan would never notice him. To his surprise, she was also drawn to him and took the first step to get to know him. Although Jordan was more experienced in relationships, for the shy Alexander, she was his very first love. The couple started dating in 2012 when they were both just 17 years old. Initially, their relationship was thriving. They spent a lot of time together and were nearly inseparable. At college, they were often referred to as the most beautiful couple, which made Jordan feel very flattered. The first 6 months of their relationship were filled with love, romance, and mutual respect. They surprised each other with thoughtful gifts and enjoyed celebrating small but meaningful milestones. Their social media accounts were filled with photos of them together, showcasing their happiness and featuring heartfelt captions and declarations of love. To outsiders, it appeared that they were perfect for each other and destined for a long, happy life together. They quickly decided to move in together and rented an apartment. As they were both still students, their parents provided substantial financial support. Fortunately, their parents were supportive of their relationship. Jordan was particularly fond of Alexander's parents because she came across as a responsible young woman with aspirations to become an art history teacher, leaving a positive impression on everyone she met. As time went on, Jordan's behavior started to change. It began with her increasing demands. Each month, she wanted Alexander to update her on everything he did. She openly checked his personal messages on his phone, email, and social media. She would get jealous for no apparent reason. Although this behavior was concerning, Alexander tried to ignore it because he was in love, and it didn't bother him too much. Even when she insisted he were only the clothes she bought for him, he dismissed it as her way of showing care. Soon, Jordan began to restrict Alexander's social circle. She decided who he could see and who he could no longer stay in touch with, affecting not just his friends and classmates but also his family members. Despite this control, Jordan never complained to anyone, and they still appeared to be a happy and perfect couple in public and on social media. She began to enjoy her control over him. She deleted contacts from Alexander's phone without his knowledge, blocked his family and friends, and even replied to messages on his behalf, often in a rude and insulting way. Afterward, she deleted these conversations, so Alexander had no idea what he had said to people who no longer wanted to communicate with him. The final reason for the breakup occurred when Alexander's twin brother raised concerns. Jordan started to block their communication. By then, their parents also noticed that Alexander was pulling away from the family. While his girlfriend was avoiding them completely, she refused to visit even on holidays and didn't want to talk on the phone. When they did try to reach her, she was openly rude. In the rare moments when Alexander's mother managed to speak with him, she urged him to break up with his girlfriend, warning that the relationship would lead to trouble. However, Alexander, deeply in love, refused to listen and defended his girlfriend, insisting that she cared for him and meant no harm. The Skeel family soon realized that Jordan had pressured their son to drop out of college, quit sports, and get a job. Meanwhile, she took all the money he earned to spend on her own needs and entertainment. The parents once again tried to talk to their son and persuade him to leave Jordan, but they were unsuccessful. In 2013, during his coming-of-age celebration, Jordan committed a shocking act that went unpunished. That day, she and her friends celebrated at a country hotel. As the evening progressed and guests began to leave, Jordan suddenly vanished without telling anyone. Alexander was distraught as he searched for Jordan, fearing something had happened to her. However, she returned to their room in the morning, heavily intoxicated. When Alexander tried to find out where she had been, she violently lashed out at him with both fists and insults, then laughed. 2 months later, during his own 18th birthday celebration, Jordan started a fight in front of Alexander's family and friends. She assaulted a 15-year-old girl, who was a neighbor well known to the Skeel family and had been invited to the party. Jordan believed the girl was being overly friendly with Alexander, which prompted her to attack, pulling the girl's hair and scratching her face. Jordan was still upset, but it was obvious to everyone what her true nature was. Afterward, her parents and brother urged Alexander to break up with her because of her aggressive and inappropriate behavior. Surprisingly, for the first time, he listened to them and acknowledged that she had indeed overreacted. That same evening, he spoke with her and informed her that he would not be returning to their apartment and would instead stay at his parents' house. After nearly 6 months apart, they reunited and had children together. During that time, Alexander focused on his studies and work, rarely thinking of Jordan. However, on New Year's Eve 2014, Jordan surprised him with a call to share the news that she was pregnant and they would be parents in the spring. Alexander felt both surprised and happy. Jordan apologized for not telling him sooner, explaining that she believed he no longer wanted to see her. When the guy's parents found out they were going to have a grandchild, they were overjoyed and invited Jordan to move in with them. She accepted the offer and moved into the Skeel family home. She officially got married with Alexander, and 3 months later, she and Alexander welcomed a son named William. The young parents were extremely happy, and they enjoyed a peaceful and harmonious life together until around mid-fall 2014. During this time, Jordan genuinely cared for her partner, made an effort to please him, and fell in love with him again. When William was 6 months old, Jordan became pregnant again. During this time, she became moody and emotional, insisting that Alexander move out of his parents' house immediately. Alexander attributed her behavior to hormonal changes but agreed to rent an apartment for them in the city, and they soon moved in. In the summer of 2015, they welcomed their second child, a girl named Alice. Alexander was overjoyed and treated his wife and children with great affection. However, Jordan, feeling secure that Alexander would not leave her, began to reveal her darker side. The turning point occurred after the move. Jordan prohibited her husband from contacting his family and prevented his parents from seeing their grandchildren. Meanwhile, she accepted financial help from them and even had Alexander ask his parents for money. Within a few months, she completely dominated him, breaking his spirit and taking control of his life. Jordan frequently humiliated and insulted her husband, and eventually, she began to hit him. At first, her attacks were not severe, as she wanted to see how he would react. When she realized he would tolerate everything, keep quiet, and face no consequences for her actions, she unleashed her cruelty, revealing her violent tendencies. The trouble began during their house renovation when she was unhappy with everything Alexander did. Frustrated, he remarked that it seemed impossible to satisfy her. In response, she threw a hammer at him, hitting him on the head and causing a deep wound. Dazed and nearly unconscious, he fell to the ground, holding his head as blood streamed down his face. He asked his wife for help or to call an ambulance, but she coldly told him, crawl away somewhere and die, and walked into another room to watch TV. Alexander treated his head injury on his own without visiting a doctor or telling anyone. This led Jordan to believe she could do anything without consequences, convinced her husband would never report her actions and would avoid both hospitals and the police. For the next 3 years, Alexander endured constant emotional and physical suffering. He became so depressed that he didn't recognize the threat he was under. Despite this, he continued to work hard to provide for his family, but his frustration and dissatisfaction with his wife grew steadily. Jordan not only controlled him every day but also escalated the cruelty. He was not allowed to sleep on the bed and had to lie on the floor next to the bed, without a blanket or pillow. He was also banned from entering the kitchen and could only eat the leftovers that his wife and children didn't finish. This left Alexander starving. As he was unable to buy food, Jordan had taken all his money. Furthermore, his wife deprived him of sleep and rest, creating a cruel form of entertainment for herself. Whenever he finally fell asleep, she would hit him on the head or pour boiling water on him. He later remembered waking up each time in intense pain, either bleeding or burned. After that, he would tend to his wounds with whatever he could find, while his wife quietly went to bed. Alexander viewed this situation as normal. He felt morally defeated and stopped trying to fight against it. He completely cut off communication with his parents and brother, and his wife frequently asked them for money on his behalf. She also supported her own parents financially, ensuring she could afford whatever she wanted. Alexander lost a significant amount of weight and dropped below 50 pounds. His body was frequently marked by wounds, cuts, burns, and bruises, which drew concern from others. At his workplace, colleagues encouraged him to seek medical help, but his wife insisted he quit his job to avoid being discovered. After he was let go, he became trapped with Jordan, who began to abuse him continuously, leaving him longing for rescue. Although the couple appeared to be happy to outsiders, their home life was filled with horror. Jordan managed social media accounts for her husband, frequently sharing old photos of their family along with captions expressing their love and gratitude for one another. Nobody could have imagined that a woman who looked angelic and was a mother of 2 could transform into a sophisticated monster behind closed doors. She knocked out her husband's teeth and inflicted a deep cut on his arm with a knife. His body also showed signs of burns, but he was unable to go to the hospital. At home, he had only plastic wrap and tape, which he used to bind his wounds. Neighbors often heard screams coming from their house, and some were so alarming that they called the police. However, Jordan always managed to convince the officers that everything was fine between her and her husband. During the next visit by the police, prompted by neighbors' concerns, one officer noticed a man with a fresh wound and blood running down his arm. The man appeared emaciated and had bruises of various sizes on his face. Jordan attempted to explain to the officer that her husband was mentally unstable and sometimes harmed himself. However, this time the police called for paramedics, and Alexander was taken to the hospital. The doctors were shocked by his condition. He was barely alive, and his arm was so severely injured that amputation was a real possibility. Alexander had severe second and third-degree burns covering his body. He weighed just 94 pounds, and his shoulder ligaments were injured from being hit with a screwdriver. He also had a deep cut on his forearm, several knocked-out teeth, and many bruises. During this time, Jordan entered the hospital, insisting that her husband be released to her. She claimed that he was fine and that he had caused all his injuries himself. However, no one believed her distressed claims, and it was decided to take her to the police station for questioning. Initially, Jordan denied any wrongdoing and stuck to her claim that her husband was harming himself. However, when Alexander's parents arrived at the police station after visiting him in the hospital, her attitude changed. She went on to explain in detail the actions she had taken against her husband, saying she had trained him like a dog and that he couldn't escape from her. At the same time, Jordan argued that her husband's behavior provoked her violence, alleging he was cheating on her and intentionally trying to upset her. She also maintained that he was mentally ill and had a tendency to self-harm. The man's parents firmly denied all the claims made against him. However, he hesitated to speak out against his wife at first. It was only after receiving treatment and consulting with a psychologist that Alexander found the courage to share the traumatic experiences he endured at home in recent years. Jordan believed that she would only receive a minor administrative penalty, so she was not particularly concerned about the upcoming trial. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge convicted 22-year-old Jordan of deliberately causing serious harm, both physical and emotional abuse, as well as coercive control. She received a prison sentence of 7.5 years. Her status as a mother of 2 young children did not lessen the severity of her punishment. Jordan was taken aback by this sentence, as the case was unprecedented in the UK. The children were placed in the care of their father and grandparents during their mother's imprisonment. After fully recovering from years of abuse, Alexander began working in the community and is now helping victims of domestic violence. On July 4, 2023, Jordan was released on parole after serving 5 years of her 7.5-year sentence. However, she is not allowed to approach her ex-husband or see their children. She is currently engaged to a bricklayer named Adam Stepp and is getting ready to become a mother for the 3rd time. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. At the time of the incident, she was 21 years old and living in Groton, Connecticut. She was the daughter of Michelle from her first marriage and grew up with her brother, Justin, and her younger sister, Grace. Sophia was very caring towards her siblings, whom she loved dearly. As a child, she was happy and intelligent, showing unique qualities. She was active and full of energy, leading a vibrant and fulfilling life. However, her life was significantly affected by her parents' divorce when she was about 6 or 7 years old, which left her with a deep emotional scar. During high school, Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which contributed to her depression. This mental illness is marked by extreme mood swings, including episodes of mania or hypomania. Sophia faced emotional lows, characterized by sadness and melancholy, alternating with high-energy periods of euphoria. These mood swings affected her behavior and ability to think clearly. She received treatment, including medication and therapy, to help manage her symptoms, but there is no cure for bipolar disorder. This condition poses challenges for both Sophia and her family. It had a significant impact on her daily life, making her behavior unpredictable and her life chaotic, leading to unstable relationships. Those around her often exhibited complex behaviors as well. In 2015, Sophia met Austin, a bright and cheerful young man who quickly won her heart. He pursued Sophia with charm and determination, and they entered into a 3-year relationship. Unfortunately, this relationship was difficult for both Sophia and her mother, Michelle. Austin had some troubling behaviors. He was somewhat aggressive and used anabolic steroids for sports, which contributed to the instability of their relationship. The couple frequently argued and shouted at one another, sometimes escalating to physical confrontations. Sophia, who struggled with mental health issues, often initiated these conflicts. On multiple occasions, Austin's aggressive behavior resulted in injuries to Sophia, necessitating hospital visits. About a month before the incident, Sophia found out about Austin's cheating and decided to end their relationship. Despite this, they still met occasionally. While dealing with her emotions, Sophia focused on moving forward. She was a striking young woman and briefly worked as a model for a local jeans company, which helped her pay for her education. Eventually, she graduated as a massage therapist and got a job at an upscale spa called the Red Door, located in a luxury hotel. There, she met Spencer Mugford, a 20-year-old colleague. Spencer, originally from Florida, loved the sea and was an experienced swimmer working as a sailing instructor. He came from a caring family that had big hopes for his future. Spencer and Sophia quickly formed a close bond due to their shared interests and similar personalities. They reportedly dated for a while, but their families disapproved because the couple often found themselves in troublesome situations. Sophia's mother, Michelle, expressed deep concern for her daughter's well-being, particularly since Sophia continued to meet with her ex-boyfriend, Austin, and they frequently drank alcohol together, which had become a nearly daily habit. Ultimately, Sophia and Spencer decided to end their romantic relationship and remain friends. The exact reasons for this decision are unclear, but it seems that Sophia may have rekindled her relationship with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of it, including on their last day together. On Saturday the 27th, Austin tried to reach her but didn't get any response. Initially, he wasn't too concerned because he knew Sophia often slept in. However, after several hours of trying to call and message her without success, he started to worry. He then reached out to Sophia's mother, Michelle, to check if Sophia had contacted her the night before. Michelle hadn't looked at her phone because her younger daughter had been using it all morning. When Michelle checked her phone, she saw that she had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. She decided to call back but only reached the voicemail of Spencer, boyfriend of her daughter's. This made her suspect that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle then tried to reach Sophia but got no answer. Feeling anxious, she and Austin started to search for Sophia. Austin called all the local hospitals, while Michelle reported Sophia as missing to the police. They contacted Spencer's family and found out that his relatives were also concerned because he hadn't arrived at an important family gathering and had not answered their calls. They went to Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had been there. Spencer's father was worried because he knew his son had met with Sophia the night before, especially considering the problems she was dealing with. Spencer's mother mentioned that her son had said he planned to go fishing with a friend, but she suspected he was not truthful and actually intended to meet Sophia. She last spoke to him at 10 p.m. when he said goodnight. Concerned about his absence, Spencer's family reported both his and his girlfriend's disappearance to the police around 6:30 p.m. next day. The police started searching for them at that time. Austin reached out to the sheriff to share information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He explained that he knew this because he had let Sophia go there. Austin also mentioned that he found a video Sophia posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, which was recorded on Spencer's phone, they were on a boat heading towards the lighthouse. The footage showed a young man rowing towards the lighthouse, and it looked like they were having a good time. Later, Sophia uploaded a video to her Snapchat account. In the video, she was playfully posing with a concrete barrier and a lighthouse in the background, which had a "Do Not Cross" sign. What happened just minutes after this video remains a mystery. 5 minutes after posting the video at 2:05 a.m., Spencer's mobile phone made its first call to Michelle, Sophia's mother. This was followed by 3 more calls at 2:06, 2:08, and the last call at 2:09. Michelle, who was asleep at the time, did not answer any of these calls. No voicemails or text messages were left, and 911 did not receive any calls from that number that night. The photos and videos shared by them verified their presence at the lighthouse. Consequently, the police quickly sent 20 Coast Guard units to the location. Searches were carried out by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police using air, sea, and land methods. The police made their first significant find: Sophia's car parked on a university campus, along with her cell phone inside it. Simultaneously, on that same night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had worn in the video. The police theorized that Spencer may have used it to tie the boat to the shore. The search went on through the night and into the next day. Soon after, a storm hit and state authorities decided to suspend the search for them until new clues or signs of their possible location emerged. This decision left their families and friends devastated, but they didn't give up. They continued searching on their own, putting up pictures and sharing information about Spencer and Sophia's disappearance all over the city. They urged the public to report any information they might have. However, despite many people being in the area when the young people went missing, no witnesses came forward. The families' searches continued for several days, but all questions remained unanswered. What happened? Why did Sophia repeatedly call her mother? Why didn't she leave a voicemail or call the police? There were many speculations and assumptions. Could they have consumed something illicit? Indeed, Sophia and Spencer had broken the law by stealing a boat from the campus and heading to the lighthouse without permission. It's likely Sophia feared they could be held accountable and thus chose not to contact the police. A few days prior, she and Spencer had already had legal issues. Spencer had been detained for driving under the influence, and Sophia had faced charges for aggressive behavior. Perhaps for this reason, she preferred to contact her mother rather than the police. However, it's unknown what other circumstances were present in Sophia's life at that moment. She might have been in a state of panic and unable to think clearly. Everyone's reaction to such situations can be unpredictable. On May 26, 2018, detectives worked to piece together the day's events. It started as a typical sunny and warm day, with the weekend ahead promising fun as the city prepared for Memorial Day celebrations. Sophia had the day off, while Spencer was scheduled to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once he finished his shift, the couple planned to meet and join in the festivities. They looked forward to spending the rest of the day together, including a visit to the famous lighthouse known for its paranormal happenings, which they were excited to explore. What happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. We don't know where he went, if he met anyone, or whether he had been drinking. However, we do know that Sophia parked her car at the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. She left her cell phone in the car, possibly because she forgot it or it was out of charge. They then took an illegal sailboat that had no motor, weighed 14 pounds, and was only equipped with oars. They pushed the boat into the water and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating along the rocky shores. This was a dangerous situation because the boat didn't have any safety equipment. They probably felt confident taking this risk due to Spencer's swimming and boating skills, which he had had since childhood. The investigators were only able to collect limited information about the events of that night. On Monday evening, while searching from a helicopter, the police spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck on the rocks, covered in dust. This boat was found 12 kilometers west of the lighthouse. Police reports suggest this could be the same boat that went missing from the campus and might have been used by Spencer and Sophia, but this remains unconfirmed. Fingerprints were discovered on the boat, but they were never analyzed, and the results were not made public to confirm whether they matched those of the young couple. Additionally, there was confusion about the type of boat involved. It was first described as a kayak, but later reports indicated it was a white sailboat with red markings. On June 8, 2018, fishermen on a commercial vessel near the Long Island Straits spotted something unusual in the water. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a man's body. They promptly reported their find to the Coast Guard. When police arrived, they retrieved the body of a young man from the shore. They observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body, which was later identified as Spencer Mugford. He had been reported missing a few days earlier, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna. To investigate the cause of Spencer's death, his body was sent for examination. The autopsy results confirmed that drowning was the cause of death, with no evidence of violence and all injuries linked to water. However, the specific details of the autopsy were not made public. During the same weekend that Spencer and his girlfriend went missing, 2 other men also disappeared in the area, and their bodies were later discovered, also having drowned. Initially, the police viewed these incidents as tragic accidents caused by unfortunate circumstances, and they did not explore any other theories at that time. Unfortunately, Spencer's girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, was never found. After several days of searching, fishermen discovered Spencer's body, leading his family to publish an obituary in the local media. In contrast, Sophia's family also wrote an obituary but remained hopeful for her return and continued to actively search for her. They frequently tried to recall the events leading up to her disappearance, trying to reconstruct what the young people did that evening and whether they interacted with anyone that night. Unfortunately, no new information surfaced. It remained unclear whether there were any calls made from Spencer's phone besides those to Michelle, as his mobile device was never found, and the police did not provide cell phone records. Moreover, the cameras at both the lighthouse and the campus were reportedly malfunctioning, resulting in no video footage from that night. It was also revealed that authorities had not checked the lighthouse, which should have been done immediately after the couple went missing. In July 2018, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page named Searching for Sophia McKenna to keep awareness of her case alive. The page was used to share updates, brochures, and requests for information from the public. A few weeks after Sophia went missing, a concerning incident occurred. Michelle received a message from Sophia's social media account asking for money. Since Sophia's phone was with the police, this message raised suspicions of possible hacking. The investigations into Spencer's death and Sophia's disappearance reached a standstill, with police providing no definitive answers. Meanwhile, various unofficial theories about the case circulated. One theory suggested that Austin, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, may have been involved in their disappearance, with some speculating that he could have harmed Sophia and received help from his friends in disposing of Spencer's body. Sophia and Austin had a rocky relationship characterized by frequent fights and physical confrontations, which became a topic of public gossip. Michelle, Sophia's mother, saw many of their arguments firsthand. A month before Sophia went missing, serious problems emerged after she discovered Austin was cheating on May 8, 2018, which led her to break up with him. In what could have been a revenge move or a fresh start, Sophia started dating another guy and brought him to her apartment. This angered Austin, who stormed over and began banging and kicking the door while shouting insults at Sophia. After around 15 minutes of quiet, Sophia thought Austin had left and opened the door, but he was still there and tried to push his way inside. Luckily, Sophia quickly managed to shut the door again. Neighbors reported hearing him threaten to harm Sophia if she didn't open it. By the time the police and Michelle arrived, Austin had been arrested. The following day, May 9th, a court order came into effect. In her statement, Sophia detailed earlier attacks by Austin and included photos of her injuries. She expressed that she was afraid for her life because he was stalking her. A restraining order was issued, preventing Austin from being in the same area as Sophia. However, Sophia later felt guilty about the situation, and the restrictions were changed. Now, Austin was only barred from being in the same apartment as her. The man who was with Sophia at the time did not reveal his identity and initially did not cooperate with the police. Michelle initially claimed that it was Spencer with Sophia, but later changed her statement. However, a colleague whom Sophia trusted confirmed that it was indeed Spencer. Colleagues of Sophia and Spencer stated that they were in a relationship at the time of their disappearance and acted like a couple both at work and outside of it. Witnesses reported an incident at the hotel where Sophia's ex, Austin, confronted her at her workplace and threatened her publicly. Despite this, Austin and his father joined the search for the missing couple, using a private helicopter and distributing flyers with their images throughout the city. Austin claimed on social media that Sophia had been his girlfriend for 3 years and insisted she had only a platonic friendship with Spencer. Many found this post strange, as it seemed to focus more on his relationship with Sophia than on her disappearance. On July 10th, Sophia's family and friends held a memorial for her. Austin attended the event with Michelle and later shared a now-deleted message online saying, "Rest in peace, baby, we'll see each other soon." These actions raised concerns among people who knew them. Austin told the police that he spent the entire day with Sophia on May 26th and that they continued to meet despite a court order, even making plans for the following day. A friend of Austin mentioned that around 3 a.m. on the night of the incident, Austin texted Sophia saying he was at the gym with a friend. However, this claim seems questionable since gyms are closed at that hour. His family asserted he was home before leaving for the gym. An anonymous witness stated that Austin and his brother were invited to a party that day. Although Austin initially planned to attend, he later texted that he was tired and would not go. This situation raises concerns about Austin's location when Sophia and Spencer went missing, and there are no clear answers regarding his whereabouts. Austin's friends describe him as moody, which may be intensified by steroid use. There were rumors about Austin, his brother, and a friend having ties to the local police. Furthermore, a woman related to Austin was reportedly married to the police chief who was looking into Sophia's case and had faced complaints of police violence. However, the trustworthiness of these claims, made by a friend of Austin with a criminal history, is questionable. The day after these rumors circulated, a YouTube channel focused on disappearances in Long Island uploaded a video about Sophia. After that, Austin deleted all of their photos together from his social media, leading to confusion, especially since Sophia's fate was still unknown. One theory suggests that Austin had started dating someone new and wanted to avoid complications. However, it seemed odd that he removed all photos of Sophia. Additionally, shortly after Sophia went missing, Austin became noticeably less involved in the search efforts. When he met with investigators, he seemed calm and collected, showing no visible signs of distress over the loss of someone important. However, this alone is not enough to make any accusations against Austin, as people have different ways of responding to stress. One theory proposes that Sophia was murdered to stop her from testifying against Austin in a domestic violence case. If she hadn't spoken, there would not have been enough evidence to proceed, possibly leading to the case being dismissed. This scenario occurred in the summer of 2018 when the charges against Austin were dropped. It's crucial to mention that Austin is not formally considered a suspect. This theory is speculative, and the investigation is ongoing. Another theory suggests that Sophia and Spencer might have encountered dangerous people at the lighthouse. It was a busy holiday, but witnesses either failed to remember them or deemed the information unimportant, resulting in no reports made to the police. Sophia's mother suspected that her daughter could have been kidnapped or trafficked, but there is no evidence or ransom requests to back this up. The police also looked into the possibility of an accident caused by poor judgment. The young couple took an unprepared boat without life jackets into strong currents. After reaching the lighthouse, they secured the boat with Spencer's t-shirt and took some photos, only to discover that the boat had drifted away. Spencer, relying on his swimming skills, may have underestimated the cold temperature of the water. The darkness could have distorted his perception of distance, making the boat seem closer than it actually was. Exhausted from his workday and the swim to the lighthouse, Spencer might have drowned. Sophia realized she couldn't see or hear Spencer, so she attempted to call her mother for help. In her desperation, she might have jumped in to save Spencer and ended up drowning herself. Although Sophia was not a strong swimmer, alcohol could have influenced her to make a poor decision. Alternatively, she may have been walking along the narrow ledge of the lighthouse, trying to find Spencer, when she stumbled and fell while holding her phone. If that happened, she could have been swept away by the current and drowned. These possibilities are still considered, but other theories exist as well. None are formally recognized, and there are no suspects or culprits identified. Most of this information circulates on social media. Sophia's family and friends are still searching for her, determined to find out what happened and where she might be. In 2019, an independent detective discovered several bones near the shore and quickly reported them to the police. However, when investigators arrived, they concluded that the bones were from animals. The remains were never collected, and due to high costs, no forensic tests were performed to check if they were human. There are many troubling aspects of this case that deserve a deeper investigation. After all, it involves a missing person whose family is in distress, desperately seeking answers. Sophia deserves ongoing search efforts. While other bodies of missing individuals have been found in these waters, Sophia's has not. There have been no new developments in her case, and the mystery of what occurred that night at the lighthouse remains unresolved. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Su Shingchi. On July 4, 2009, several lecturers from the finance department of a Chinese university gathered to work overtime to manage and monitor the school's finances and expenses from the previous semester. One lecturer, Tam Xing Fai, 43, was scheduled to attend but was missing. At 11 a.m., a colleague named Ma tried to call Xing Fai's cell phone but received no response. Despite the heavy workload, Ma was not too worried at first. He thought Xing Fai might be taking care of his family's dog, which had a skin disease. Xing Fai had planned to take the dog to the vet, so Ma assumed that was where he was. On July 5th, the university's finance department held a meeting, but Xing Fai failed to attend for the second time. Ma tried calling his cell phone again, but no one answered. Unfortunately, Ma did not have Xing Fai's home phone number, so he could not contact him that way. By July 6th, Xing Fai had been absent from work for 2 days and had not contacted any of his colleagues. Eventually, one of his colleagues reported the situation to the finance department. Xing Fai's supervisors had his home landline number, so they called there, but like his cell phone, no one answered. They called the library where his 33-year-old wife, Han Tong Yen, worked. Library staff confirmed that she had also been absent from work without permission. The couple lived in Zhongshan, Guangdong Province, China, and had been married for 11 years. They have 2 daughters, the eldest, Tam Hu-man, 10, and the youngest, Tam Hu-wing, 7. Despite their financial difficulties and living in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, they are known to be kind, cheerful, and positive people with well-behaved children. Xing Fai often takes his daughters into town to have fun, leading some to believe that the family went on vacation together. However, something unexpected happened that prevented them from returning home. His colleagues spent quite a while trying to contact him by calling both his cell phone and his home phone, hoping to reach him. Finally, someone answered, but instead of a family member, it was a middle-aged man who was a stranger. The man claimed to be Xing Fai's cousin and said that the family had gone to Dongguan, Guangdong Province, China for the summer vacation. He said that Xing Fai had entrusted his phone to him for safekeeping. When asked when the family would return to Hong Kong, the man could not answer. After repeated inquiries, he hung up and turned off the phone. This call only added to the suspicion and anxiety of his colleagues towards Xing Fai. Xing Fai was always hardworking and responsible, never missing work without a good reason. If he planned to go on vacation with his children, he would make sure their schools were notified in advance. In addition, his family kept 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would take care of them if they traveled to the mainland and how they would be able to afford the trip to China. Previously, Xing Fai lived with his parents, His father was a sailor and his mother worked at a paper mill. Unfortunately, his father went missing and was never found, which caused his mother to become ill and eventually end up in a nursing home. Xing Fei's abandonment of her was considered completely out of character for him, especially since he visited her every week. They eventually decided to contact the police. One of Xing Fei's co-workers led the police to Xing Fei's house, which was located at an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During their journey, they saw a short man through the fence of Xing Fei's property. He quickly disappeared from sight, but they didn't think much of it and continued on. When they reached the gate of the house, they found that the door was locked. The police then inspected the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covers an area of nearly 450 square meters, of which only 90 square meters are built, leaving nearly 350 square meters as empty flower beds. The construction of the building was not permitted. The previous owner had built several corrugated iron sheds on the site for waste recycling. A stone house next door was used as a pig farm, and there were few residents in the area. As a result, the police were only able to question one neighbor, an elderly woman surnamed Wang, who lived alone across the street. She said she had lived in the area for a long time and was familiar with the family's routine, noting that they often spent their afternoons working in the garden. However, she had little information about their personal lives and commented that the family rarely had visitors due to the isolated nature of the site. The only relative who visited and contacted Xing Fei was Xing Fei's middle-aged cousin, Zhu Wang. Zhu Wang did not have much information about Xing Fei's family. He only knew that Xing Fei's cousin lived in a nearby stone house. Xing Fei's colleague informed the police that his call was answered by Zhu Wang, leading them to believe that he was the one on the other end of the line. However, Zhu Wang said that he did not know the address of Xing Fei or his cousin. Prior to these events, the police went to Xing Fei's house to investigate in Pingqi village. That same day, the police found a man at a stone house on Waju Road number 74. The man, Su Shingchi, 42, confirmed that he was Xing Fei's cousin. He said that he often went to Xing Fei's house to help with renovations and gardening. When asked about the phone call, he said that the family was in China for a vacation. On July 5, Xing Fei visited his mother at the nursing home. He then went home to tell Su about his plans to travel to Dongguan, China for a few days. Su explained that using Xing Fei's Hong Kong mobile phone in mainland China would incur high roaming charges, so he asked Su to keep the phone until he returned. The witness and Xing Fei's colleague who saw him running away was actually Zhu Wang, who had just finished feeding the family dog. Su appeared calm and there were no significant inconsistencies in his testimony. When the police asked Su if he had the keys to the family's house, he said no. The police continued to investigate the area. When the police questioned the villagers about Su, they discovered that he had been dishonest. Villagers confirmed that Su often went to the house to work and could open both the gate and the door himself, even when no one else was there. This suggested that he might have had a key to the house. In fact, he did have a key, as Zhu Wang saw Xing Fei hand the key to Su at the university office, asking Su to get the key for him. Later, when the police returned to Su's house to ask about the key, he denied having the key again. He claimed that he had used the spare key for renovations but had returned it, so he said he could not enter the house. During this interrogation, Su seemed much more nervous than during the first interrogation, and he deliberately avoided important details. When the police threatened to search his house, Su panicked and suddenly remembered that he actually had another house key that he had not returned. He then took the key from the closet and gave it to the police. Although Su's behavior was suspicious, there was no concrete evidence linking him to the family's disappearance, so the police decided to keep an eye on him while they continued their investigation. They used a spare key to enter Xing Fai's home, where they found the interior in disarray, suggesting a break-in. The police also found some fresh blood stains on the walls, suggesting that someone had been murdered in the house. In the kitchen, they found a sink full of dirty dishes, which raised doubts about the idea that the family had traveled to China, as they would not have left the house in such a state. In the couple's master bedroom, the police discovered the family's identity cards in the wardrobe. The police contacted the border office and confirmed that the family had never left Hong Kong. As they continued their search, officers found a bloody shirt in the next room and a bloody plastic water pipe in the corner of the room. Police deployed sniffer dogs to collect more evidence and were able to locate the missing family. The dogs picked up a scent, leading them to bloodstains found under the freshly dug soil. In addition, despite it being summer vacation, the couple's 2 children, Hiu Man and Hiu Wing, had enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family was not on vacation. A special task force was therefore set up to investigate the case. Police sealed off the scene and blocked the entrances to Ping Chi village to outsiders while placing Su Shingchi under house arrest as the prime suspect. Su quickly confessed to the police. He revealed that he was from Huangpu in Guangdong province and usually lived with his sister, wife, and 2 sons, aged 15 and 16. He used to support himself by selling motorcycles in Junction City, but in 2006, Guangdong imposed a motorcycle ban, which led to a decline in sales. Faced with financial difficulties, he contacted Xing Fai in Hong Kong to seek help in finding a job in the city. Xing Fai helped Su get a construction job that paid 500 Hong Kong dollars a day, including food and accommodation. However, after working for 2 weeks, Su was unhappy because after deductions, he only received 220 Hong Kong dollars. Frustrated, he quit the job without notice and returned to China. In 2007, after Typhoon Pabuk severely damaged his house, Su returned to Hong Kong because the repair costs were too expensive. He asked Xing Fai to help him find another job in Hong Kong. When Xing Fai couldn't find another job, Su Shingchi offered to repair the house, do gardening, and do housework around Xing Fai's house. And Xing Fai would pay Su. Xing Fai agreed to the deal, so every 2 months, Su would come to Hong Kong to help with housework, mainly gardening and repairing the house. During this time, Su began to notice Helen Tong Yen, who was later discovered by Xing Fai. On July 3rd, Su arrived in Hong Kong. 2 days later, on July 5th, Xing Fai took Su to visit his mother at the nursing home. After the visit, Su sneaked out to go home first to harass Helen Tong Yen. However, Xing Fai came home earlier than expected and caught him. Enraged, Xing Fai rushed at Su. In a panic, Su grabbed a 25-centimeter-long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai, causing him to collapse in a pool of blood and die. Horrified by what he had just done, Su considered calling the police. However, he did not. Su then thought of a way to silence Xing Fai's wife, Helen Tong Yen, and prevent her from calling the police. Su grabbed some wire from the corner of the room and rushed towards her, knocking her to the ground and tying her hands behind her back. He then covered her mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over her head. Meanwhile, the couple's 2 children were in the bedroom watching cartoons. Helen Tong Yen shouted for them to run away, but instead they ran towards her and found their father dead and Su attacking their mother. In fear, they ran back to their room, crying and locking the door. Since she was tied up, Su left Helen Tong Yen behind and chased after the children. Hearing the noise, Hiu Man and Hiu Wing saw Su holding a pair of pliers. He pried open the door and used more electric wires to attack both of them. He tied their hands behind their backs, taped their mouths and noses, and put plastic bags over their heads. After leaving the bedroom, he returned to find that both children had stopped breathing. Hiu Man and Hiu Wing suffocated shortly after. After killing the entire family, Su was at a loss for what to do next. He returned home to think things over. He felt that hiding the bodies in a ditch or pond would be too easy to discover, and that dismembering them would be tiring and time-consuming. Instead, he decided to bury the bodies in their own home. On July 6th, he returned home to clean up as much blood as possible. He then dug a hole deep and wide enough to fit the bodies of the 4 family members and quickly placed them inside. He also threw the murder weapon into the hole before filling it up. Although he was skeptical of his motives, the police accepted the rest of his testimony. They took Su back to the house, where he pointed out where a sharp knife, a water pipe, a pair of pliers, and other tools used in the crime were. The fire department was called to assist in exhuming the buried body. Firefighters arrived equipped with digging tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. They began digging but soon encountered a significant obstacle: they hit cement. Su had left out a crucial detail in his confession: pouring cement before covering it up. The firefighters could not determine the thickness of the cement, and since the cement had hardened, their tools were ineffective. The police then hired a private engineering company, which brought in specialized equipment to drill through the concrete slab. When the team drilled into the hole and discovered human hair, they panicked and refused to continue, fearing that they might reach the body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to continue. After digging, the hole was 2.54 meters wide and 6 feet deep. They finally discovered the bodies of a family, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. At the bottom was Shingchi's body, his hands and feet tied with electric wire, with multiple stab wounds to his stomach, back, and neck, and his clothes soaked in blood. Human and Huing's mouths and noses were taped, their hands and feet were tied, and the children's faces looked distorted. Helen Tong Yan's condition was similar. Her face was distorted, her hands and feet were tied, her mouth and nose were covered, and her eyes were covered with transparent tape. Su Shingchi was arrested, and during interrogation, he admitted that he had flirted with a woman. She felt uncomfortable and informed Shingchi about the incident. Shingchi becomes angry and kicks Su out of their home, forbidding him from returning. On July 3rd, Su returned home to start work, and his relationship with his cousin seemed to have improved. However, on July 4th, he again behaved inappropriately towards Helen Tong Yan. While Shingchi was away, Su attempted to molest her. She escaped and locked herself in her room while calling for help. Not wanting to attract the attention of the neighbors, Su angrily left the house. On July 5th, Su and Shingchi went to the nursing home, but he left first. Anticipating this, Shingchi returned home early and found Su at his home and was trying to get in to talk to Helen Tong Yan. An argument ensued, and in the heat of the moment, Su stabbed Shingchi. The rest of his confession was consistent with his initial statement but added the detail that he had filled the makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were sent for autopsy, it became clear that Su's testimony was false. Shingchi's murder was much more brutal than Su had claimed. Shingchi had been stabbed 9 times in the head and neck, nearly 80 times in the body, and 10 times in the arms and legs. Instead of being suffocated with a plastic bag, he had been strangled. Forensic investigations showed that the cutlery and dishes in the house did not contain the family's DNA, but did contain Su's DNA. The weapon Su used was not a family kitchen knife, but a knife he owned. Furthermore, the cement used to bury the body had been purchased before the murder, suggesting that the crime was premeditated. Police discovered that bank cards had been used at ATMs after the time of death, but could not be withdrawn due to repeated incorrect PIN entries. In addition, the victim's cash and bank cards were missing, suggesting robbery as the motive behind the crime. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in Su's testimony, he would quickly come up with another explanation. He claimed that his ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs while his 2 children were in school and he needed $100,000 in cash to pay for it. During his visits to Hong Kong, he did not earn much money, which prompted him to seek help from Fei. Su believed that Fei was actually rich but acted like a miser, and he thought that the low wages he received while working for Fei were because they were exploiting him as cheap labor. On July 3rd, Su returned to Hong Kong alone without informing anyone. He waits until July 5th, when Fei has a day off from work. While Fei is at the nursing home, Su, armed with a hidden knife, knocks on his door. When Fei returns and finds Su there, he invites him to cook something while they talk. As soon as Su enters the kitchen, he suddenly asks to borrow 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. Fei refuses and explains to Su that the money was for his mother's medical treatment and his children's education. Su does not want to accept this answer and accuses Fei of just wanting to use him as cheap labor. This accusation angers Fei, and when Su continues to press the issue, Fei tells him to leave. As Fei turns to leave, Su lunges at him, covering his mouth before stabbing him in the back. He then threatened Man and Wing, ransacked the house for cash and bank cards, and demanded the card passwords. Fei pretended to provide a fake password, which Su did not realize was invalid at the time. Su also lied about strangling the others and claimed that he killed them by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting plastic bags over their heads. When Su went to the nearest ATM, he discovered that he had been scammed because his PIN did not work. When he returned home, he discovered that people had suffocated while he was away. Seeing the food he had prepared, he decided to sit and eat next to the 4 corpses while thinking of what to do with them. After stealing 6,000 Hong Kong dollars from Fei, he buried the corpses and the tools he used in a small hole before going to sleep at his stone house. The next morning, Su realized that the smell from the buried corpses might give them away. To prevent this, he went to buy cement, dug up the hole, poured cement in it, and covered it up. He decided to stay at home for a while to answer any calls to Fei's cell phone or home phone, telling anyone who asked that he was keeping an eye on things while they were away on vacation. Su did not expect the deception to be discovered so quickly. Even then, he continued to lie about several details, including how he had purchased cement before the incident and the circumstances surrounding the victims' deaths. At that point, the police were no longer focused on obtaining a true confession, believing they had enough evidence to proceed. The trial took place in the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010, where he pleaded not guilty. He claimed that his previous statement about having an affair with Helen Tong Yen was correct, asserting that he killed her in self-defense and that the deaths of Man and Wing were accidental. On November 23, the jury returned a verdict in which Su Shingchi was sentenced to life imprisonment for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The judge declared that Su Shingchi had no conscience, was worse than an animal, and had no remorse. He accused Su of fabricating his self-defense testimony and his relationship with Helen Tong Yen, not to receive a lighter sentence, but simply to tarnish their reputations after death. Su Shingchi's family from Hong Kong defended him against Fei's accusations, claiming that Fei was a hypocrite and the real villain, using Su as cheap labor and taking a portion of his wages. This defense angered neighbors and residents of Ping Chi Village, forcing Su's family to return to China to escape the negative backlash. The crime itself was one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. Tam Fei's family received a significant outpouring of support, with many people visiting to offer their condolences and netizens donating enough money to pay for the funeral. In addition, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family and taken for a walk every July 5 near their old home. On August 9, 2022, Su Shingchi died of liver cancer at the age of 55 in Stanley Prison, Hong Kong. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jock Waller. June 1, 2011 marked a turning point in the life of the Jock Waller family. That day, Jock called her sister Cheryl to say that she was going to pick up her children from her ex-husband Clay Waller and would be home later. However, Jock never returned and did not call back. After trying to contact her sister without success, Cheryl became increasingly worried. To address her concerns, she drove to the police station around 7 p.m. At the station, Cheryl announced that Clay Waller had killed younger sister. It was a shocking statement for all the police, as Jock had only called Cheryl a few hours earlier and there was no reason to be alarmed and assumed that she was in trouble. But it turned out that Cheryl's hunch was correct, and her sister Jock was indeed caught up in a macabre story. So what happened to Jock, and what made Cheryl really believe that Clay Waller had killed her sister even before Jock was reported missing? Jock was a sweet, kind, and caring girl when she met Clay, and they hit it off. Clay had a stutter that caused some people to make fun of him, which made him feel self-conscious. Jock, however, was different. She never made fun of him and always protected him, making sure he didn't get hurt. That was her nature. She protected the vulnerable, fought against injustice, and helped people. As their love blossomed, Jock and Clay became closer and eventually married when they were in their 30s. They bought a small house in Sanguine View, Missouri, and Jock was building a family there. Jock had a successful career, unlike her husband, whose life was constantly failing and couldn't stay in one place for long. As a result, Jock was the sole provider for the family. She had always dreamed of having children, and when she found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She was even more delighted to learn that she would be having triplets. The couple welcomed 2 daughters, Avery and Addison, and a son named Maddox. Caring for 3 newborns at once was a huge challenge for Jock, but she did not complain. Instead, she took on the responsibility alone, as her husband seemed indifferent to the children. Clay took a job at the sheriff's office to support the family while his wife took care of the children, but he did not stay long. He was fired after a year, and during that time, only Jock's parents and sister helped her with the children so she could rest. After Clay lost her job, Jock began working to support the family. Despite having a child, Clay did not change his habits and showed little interest in his family or his job. Occasionally, he took on a part-time job, but it did not bring in the income they needed. He seemed content to live off Jock, who worked 40 hours a week while still caring for the children. Jock's career took off, leading her to a management position at an insurance company. However, this success only made her husband more comfortable, and he decided not to worry about money anymore. Instead of appreciating his wife, Clay abused her in every way possible. He insulted her, called her worthless, and told her that no one wanted her. He had affairs with other women. Jock's parents and sister were extremely outraged by her husband's behavior and convinced her to divorce him. However, at that time, Jock was not ready for such an extreme choice and tried to keep her family together. Every day, any hope of saving her marriage went up in smoke before her eyes. A few years later, the couple began to have problems. They were in financial trouble because her husband was not working and Jock's salary was not enough to support their growing family. The mortgage debts kept mounting and they were in danger of losing their home. Jock decided to move in with her sister, while her husband stayed with a friend. By this time, the children were a little older and Jock made the difficult but necessary decision for herself to get a divorce because she felt that she and the children deserved a better life. She talked to her husband about it and at first, Clay took the news calmly. However, he later changed his mind and refused to divorce. Clay began to threaten Jock. At first, the threats were indirect and vague, but eventually, he directly threatened her life, claiming that divorcing him would be a death sentence for her and the children. This scared Jock, but she did not give up on her decision. She could not continue living this way and sought to distance herself from her husband. Jock confided in her family about Clare's behavior and kept a diary of his disturbing actions. She also noted that her husband had been following her. At the time, Jock and the children were staying with her sister. The children, who were only 5 years old, did not understand the situation, but Jock explained that it was necessary. Eventually, things began to return to normal and the divorce proceedings were almost complete. Clare seemed to have accepted the divorce and stopped bothering Jock. The two began to move forward and began to build a new relationship. Jock allowed her husband to visit the children and they stopped arguing. On June 1, 2011, Clare and Jock scheduled a meeting at the lawyer's office to discuss the final important details of the divorce. That day, their son Maddox was with his father, while the other children were at Jock's sister Cheryl's house. After the meeting, Jock planned to pick up her son. When she left the office, she called her sister Cheryl and told her everything had gone well. She drove to Clare's house to pick up her son and then made plans to return to her sister's house. That was their last conversation. Jock, 39, never heard from her again. Over time, Cheryl grew worried and started calling Jock, but she didn't answer. Cheryl then tried calling Clare, but he didn't answer either. Cheryl suspected that Clare might have done something to Jock, so she texted him, "If I don't hear from Jock in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police." Clare immediately called her back, asking what was wrong. Cheryl replied that he knew exactly what she meant. But Clare insisted that he did not know where Jock was and promised to tell her to call Cheryl back when he saw her. Doubting him, Cheryl took younger sister children to her parents' house and filed a police report herself. The police were wary of Cheryl's claim that Clare was involved in her sister's disappearance, but did not send her home to wait for 24 hours to pass. Instead, they quickly decided to contact Clare to find out if there was any clue as to Jock's whereabouts. They called Clare, and he said that he had lunch with Jock. He said that they had met at the lawyer's office to discuss some aspects of the divorce and then drove to his house to talk further. He said they had a chat and then he went to the store. When he returned, Jock's car was gone and he assumed that she had left. According to Clare, their son Maddox was in Illinois with his new girlfriend at the time, and Jock knew this and was not concerned about their son. He insisted that she had come to his house just to talk, not for their son. Clare's words seemed hard to believe. Jock had made it clear to her sister that she had come to Clare's house for her son. She had no intention of discussing anything with him, especially since she would not allow her son to be with another woman so far away. She would have been furious with Clare in that situation. Cheryl did not believe the story. She convinced the police that Clare was lying and hiding something, and that things were indeed serious. Jock and her car were reported missing, and a massive search began. Hours later, Jock's car, a Honda Pilot, was found on the interstate with flat tires. It was no accident. The tires had been deliberately punctured and looked like they had been set up. The car was found open and empty, with some blood on the back seat, but there were no clues to Jock's whereabouts. It seemed increasingly likely that she had been attacked and kidnapped. The search for Jock focused on that area, with many volunteers working alongside police and rescue dogs. Despite the unbearable heat, people were eager to help. The family offered a $3,500 reward for any information about Jock's whereabouts. Despite their efforts, the search was unsuccessful. The police began to focus more on her ex-husband, Clare. They went to his house to talk to him again, but Clare repeated the same story. When police asked to search his home and car, Clare refused and immediately hired a lawyer to defend his rights. For days after she disappeared, Clare left his wife a tearful voicemail, "Hi honey, it's Sunday. I went missing on Wednesday. Please, if you get this message, call me. I don't know where you are and I miss you so much. Please call me." The police then obtained a search warrant and returned to his home. While examining the car, they discovered stains that looked like blood. The forensic team collected samples and sent them for testing, which showed that they were fish blood. It turned out that Clay had intentionally covered the car with fish blood to throw the forensic experts off. When the house was inspected, it was noticed that the floor had no carpet. A section of the floor had been cut out, leaving a noticeable mark. Small drops of blood were found on the basement hallway wall. There were signs that furniture had been moved. Something unusual was going on in the house. The forensic team checked under the floor and discovered a bloody carpet. Blood and carpet samples were sent to the lab for analysis. The police tracked Jock's last movements. At 1:10 a.m., she was seen at a pharmacy with her ex-husband. They appeared to be normal. 2 hours later, Jock was caught on camera. ATM security recorded the withdrawal. Jock did not appear on the surveillance camera afterward, while Clay did. Hours later, Clay, his son, and his new girlfriend went to a toy store. They then went to a car wash in his pickup truck, which had a suspicious trash can inside. Clay changed clothes and washed the car and boat. Suspicion grew around Clay, and he became the prime suspect. Police released photos of Clay's pickup truck and boat, asking any witnesses who saw them to come forward. A young couple reported seeing Clay near Devil's Island on the Mississippi River, which was later confirmed by Clay's cell phone records. This prompted police to conduct a search of the area, but despite their efforts, nothing was found. At that time, forensic testing revealed that drops of blood found in Clay's home matched those of the missing woman, Jock. Based on this evidence, the police suspected that Jock was likely dead. The police brought Clay in for questioning and attempted to get him to confess to the murder. However, he refused to admit to any wrongdoing, instead claiming that it was old blood from a domestic violence incident in the kitchen. Without a body, the police could not arrest a suspect and charge him. They released Clay but continued to monitor and investigate him. Clay, who had worked as a deputy sheriff, knew full well that the police were watching him, and he played a cat-and-mouse game with them. He would go to deserted vacant lots to disrupt the investigation while the entire neighborhood was involved in the search for Jock, the missing mother of 3 children. Clay continued to harass the search party and Jock's family. He drove by, insulting them and yelling that they were wasting their time, claiming that they wouldn't find anything. His defiant behavior raised more and more suspicions. Meanwhile, Jock's sister, Cheryl, sought custody of the triplets, fearing for their safety as Clay was their father. Clay's erratic behavior eventually led to Cheryl gaining custody, which angered him even more. He began threatening Cheryl with violence, even posting about it on social media. Cheryl recorded these threats and reported them to the police. Nearly 5 months after Jock's disappearance, police arrested Clay and charged him with making threats to death. Although he admitted to the charges, Clay claimed he acted out of anger and despair over losing custody of the children, with no intention of harming Cheryl. He believes he is the victim in this situation. During the investigation, police discover that Clay is being accused of stealing $50,000 from a previous company in stalking a man. Despite this, Clay denies any involvement in Jock's disappearance. When questioned, Clay claims that Jock's new lover, Harry, is responsible for her death. However, police investigate Harry and discover that he has a solid alibi, eliminating him as a suspect. The evidence points to Clay, but he continues to deny any wrongdoing. He is eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison for threatening his wife's sister, Cheryl. Police continue to investigate Jock's disappearance, searching Devil's Island but finding no trace of her. 2 years after her disappearance, police had gathered enough circumstantial evidence, including video footage and blood found in Clay's home, to charge him with Jock's murder, even though her body had never been found. It was a risky move, because if they lost, the DA's office would not be able to charge him a second time. However, the prosecutor was determined. Clay, after consulting with his attorney, made a deal with the prosecutor to reduce his sentence. Clay offered to plead guilty to murder and provide a burial site. Jock's family agreed to the deal because it was important to find her body and give her a proper burial. Clay led police to his ex-wife's burial site. It was located in a remote location on a sandbar on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. The initial investigation was hampered because Clay could not remember the exact tree in which he had buried Jock's body. However, he eventually revealed that he had placed a bag of fertilizer on top of her grave. A gardener pointed out that large amounts of fertilizer could kill trees, leading the police to focus on 3 dead trees in the area. When they dug up the grave, they found Jock's body under one of the trees, wearing the same clothes she had last worn. The woman was identified from dental records as Jock Waller. The discovery of Jock's body brought closure to her loved ones, who were finally able to hold a funeral for her. Ironically, the ceremony was held on her parents' 50th wedding anniversary. At this time, Cheryl had to tell her children that their mother had died and that their father was responsible for her death. This revelation was devastating to the children, who not only lost their mother, but also their relationship with their father. The children immediately shunned Clay and refused to communicate with him. As part of his plea agreement, Clay was required to provide a detailed confession of his crimes. According to his statement, he began thinking about murder a year before Jock died, after she announced that she wanted to end their relationship. Despite these dark thoughts, he initially pushed them aside because Jock was the mother of his children. Clay felt he couldn't let Jock take his children. He had warned her earlier that if she continued to do so, things would not end well for her, but she chose to ignore him. The night before the murder, he had dug a grave for Jock on Devil's Island. It was then that he began to consider taking her life. At the time, their divorce seemed to be going smoothly. After visiting a lawyer, the couple had a conversation in which Jock suggested they have one last intimate encounter together. They went to his house, where they continued the conversation in the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator to find a snack. When he raised his head, he accidentally hit Jock on the head, causing her nose to bleed. This enraged her, and she stormed out into the hallway. She began screaming that he would never see their children again. This was Clay's breaking point. In a fit of rage, he punched her in the face and then strangled her. After the fight, he dumped Jock's body in a prepared grave on Devil's Island. He then cleaned up the crime scene by washing his car, cleaning the house, and showering. He changed into new clothes and attempted to resume his normal routine by meeting his new girlfriend and son at a toy store, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Clay claimed the murder was an impulsive act driven by emotion, contradicting his earlier statement about digging the grave the day before. This inconsistency raised suspicions of premeditated murder. The medical examiner's report showed that the victim had suffered multiple skull fractures, consistent with blunt force trauma rather than a simple fight. Clay's initial story was not believed. Clay seemed content with his 20-year sentence for second-degree murder, showing no remorse for killing his ex-wife Jock. However, the prosecution had a surprising twist. The hole he dug to bury Jock was in another state, Illinois, and the murder took place in Missouri. These features fall under federal laws against domestic violence across states, and he violated them. This allowed him to add 35 years to his sentence. Clay Waller would be eligible for parole after serving 85% of his 55-year sentence. Clay had no idea that his confession would have serious consequences due to a federal law he was unaware of. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno arrived at the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, in the Costa Rican province of Puntarenas. She was traveling with her little dog named Mafalda, it she treated like a daughter. The first day passed without incident. Maria Luisa went to the beach, had lunch at a restaurant, and drank some alcohol, activities common for tourists. However, the following day, everything changed. At 4:30 p.m. sharp, Maria requested that a bottle of wine, mineral water, and 2 glasses be brought to her room. It's worth noting that she didn't mention being with anyone, and everyone around her was convinced that she wanted to rest alone. Throughout the entire afternoon and night, no movement was recorded in her room. On July 20th, the hotel staff tried to contact her, but they received no response. A staff member had previously spoken with Maria, who mentioned that she lived alone because she had recently separated from her boyfriend, was not feeling well, and was only traveling with her small dog, Mafalda. Since several months had passed since the official start of the pandemic, Maria said that this had also affected her mental health, which was deteriorating. Considering everything she had been through, she said she needed a vacation. Therefore, the hotel staff decided to enter the room to check regularly, in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The front door was locked from the inside, so they looked for another way in and checked the door leading to the patio. This room had an emergency exit for guests with pets. They had previously opened the patio door so the dog could go outside. When the staff approached this exit, they found the door half open. Upon entering, they were hit by a terrible odor and saw blood stains throughout the room. The dog was alive, trembling in a corner and avoiding the staff, likely due to trauma or fear. The lifeless body of Maria was found lying motionless on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa Cedeno was a highly respected anesthesiologist. At 43, she led the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Sima Hospital in Escazú. Her colleagues admired her greatly, and during the early pandemic, she was notably committed to helping patients in need. As a medical professional, she provided significant support to her loved ones, arranging health insurance, assisting with medical appointments. Maria's parents lived in San Carlos, which made it difficult for her to be with her family all the time. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved traveling both within Costa Rica and internationally. Her reputation was impeccable. The news of Maria's death was a tremendous shock to her family and Costa Rica. People were left asking, who would want to harm someone like Maria? From the moment the hotel staff discovered the lifeless Maria body, the mysteries of this case began. The crime scene is confusing, not only because of the brutality Maria endured, but also because of the mysteries that arise as soon as they enter the hotel room she rented. Like most hotels worldwide, this hotel keeps a record of the magnetic keys used for the rooms. This means that each time a room is accessed, the card used is recorded, and the key's code is identified. This system allows they to determine whether the person accessing the room was a guest or a hotel employee. In Maria's murder, there was no record of any other keys being used other than hers. Maria had entered her room alone the previous night, with no one else entering through the main door. However, the room had a sliding glass door at the back that could be used as an alternative entry point. Since this door could only be locked from the inside, it is possible that Maria left the door unlocked, either intentionally letting someone in or accidentally leaving the door open. This allowed someone to enter and commit the murder. As the door didn't have an electronic lock system, there was no record of anyone entering or exiting through it. This was considered the most logical explanation at the time. After discovering Maria's body, hotel staff immediately contacted the police. Upon examining the scene, it was clear that she had been brutally murdered. Her body showed severe damage, indicating that she had been tortured by someone who was extremely enraged. Forensic experts collected evidence and analyzed every detail to determine the cause of death and identify the perpetrator. The authorities recommended a closed casket at the funeral due to the extreme level of brutality inflicted upon Maria. An autopsy was later performed, which showed that the body had multiple bite marks and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria attempted to defend herself. The autopsy also revealed that the killer cleaned the she-body after the murder. According to the investigator, Maria was killed in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found on the bed. The killer then moved the body to the bathroom, washed and dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it back on the bed. Although the killer attempted to wash the Maria body to eliminate evidence, this proved nearly impossible due to the extensive presence of blood throughout the room. Blood stains were found on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed, indicating the brutality of the attack. The forensic experts took photographs and collected as much physical evidence as possible from the scene. The body was then sent for an autopsy, and the police started interviewing the hotel staff and guests who may have witnessed or heard something. Given the state of the crime scene, it is likely that Maria screamed violently and her dog barked loudly during the attack. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night. The hotel was relatively empty, but there were still a few people working at the hotel, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, who lived there with his husband Dano, were also present there. Additionally, Harry had allowed some acquaintances to stay at the hotel due to their financial difficulties. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses were found in Maria's hotel room. The wine had been ordered from room service. Later, investigators examined Maria's cell phone and found that she had sent a photo of the 2 glasses to a friend. However, the message did not indicate that she was with someone or she was waiting for someone to come to her room. She also sent an audio message to the same friend describing the hotel's all-inclusive package and its benefits. Maria seemed pleased with the service, mentioning that staff would bring her drinks, fruit, and other treats. She also mentioned interacting with hotel staff, including the bartender and hotelier's assistant, and noted that the owner was Dutch. Although she acknowledged the hotel is a bit worn out and understaffed, she expressed her overall satisfaction with her stay. The room cost 155,000 colons per night. Authorities investigating Maria's murder spoke with her friends and relatives to identify suspect. They discovered that she often ordered 2 glasses, even when alone, to have 1 for alcohol and 1 for water. This suggested she wasn't waiting for anyone at the time of the attack. The investigation revisited the initial theory: the attacker must have been someone who saw Maria in the hotel, noticed the back door was open and attacked her. However, the extreme brutality of the crime suggests that the killer had deep hatred and anger towards the victim, and often the killer knew the victim. Even so, there is no evidence that Maria was with anyone or had enemies at the time of her death. The autopsy revealed additional details about Maria's death, including signs of strangulation, blows to her face, arms, and chest, and evidence of abuse. After analyzing the autopsy results, conducting interviews with family, friends, and hotel staff, authorities concluded that the attack was likely carried out by multiple individuals. This theory was based on the fact that there were no reports of Maria screaming during the attack. Authorities believed that at least 2 attackers were involved, and they took complete control of Maria. Some investigators even suggested that a 3rd person may have been involved, as the victim showed signs of abuse. According to this theory, 2 assailants held Maria Luisa down and a 3rd raped her. All of this is evidenced by the fact that when her body was analyzed, there was no sign of rope or anything to indicate that she was tied up. Police speculated that the men may have stuffed something into Maria's mouth to stop her from screaming or to prevent her screams from being heard, in order to carry out the attack undetected. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury, which could have occurred in several ways. It might have been caused by a violent blow to the head, by being undressed, as there was evidence of fractured vertebrae, or by being hit with an object or falling heavily to the floor. Overall, what the assailants did to Maria was an atrocity, and without clear motivation. The first suspect was quickly identified because this man, who was staying at the hotel, had numerous fresh wounds resembling scratches and blows, suggesting he had been defending himself. Upon investigation, it was revealed to be Teodoro Herrera Martinez, an exotic dancer working in the city's nightclubs and staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Teodoro was arrested when authorities were looking for evidence that he was involved in the murder. The man's footprints were compared to those at the crime scene. 2 matching prints were found on the black ceramic tile floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A short time later, a second suspect named Luis Carlos Miranda was arrested. A hotel security guard had seen him walking in the hallways at night with Teodoro. Because Torreira was already in custody, Luis needed to be questioned to check for any links to the case. Additionally, tests revealed that his dental records matched the bite marks on Maria's body. Hotel employees testified that they saw Maria talking to Luis and, on one occasion, to Teodoro. However, their interactions were casual, like simple greetings, rather than those of acquaintances or friends. This might be because there were very few guests at the hotel, so they may have passed each other many times. Earlier, the hotel owner allowed 2 friends, Luis and Teodoro, to stay on the property due to financial difficulties. The police decided to question the owner of the hotel, Harry Bowden, after finding matching footprints and bite marks from the 2 suspects, Luis and Teodoro. During questioning, Harry revealed that on the night of the murder, July 19, 2020, he and husband were having dinner in their apartment within the hotel with Luis and Teodoro. After dinner, the 4 men went to a private pool. Harry also disclosed that Luis and Teodoro worked for him in exchange for accommodation. Luis managed the website and marketing, while Teodoro worked as a cook and bartender. The hotel owners and Luis and Teodoro were not close friends initially, but after moving into the hotel a year before the murder, they started spending more time together, going out for meals and socializing. And thus, the 4 men became friends. Although Harry cooperated by giving an interview in August 2020, but he was arrested because bite marks found on Maria's body matched his dental records, which began to reveal the truth. The police confiscated the phones of all the detainees and found text messages between Luis and Harry that turned out to be very compromising. In these messages, Luis invited Harry to have an intimate relationship with a woman he had been following. This exchange happened several days before the incident. However, Luis and Harry claimed that the messages didn't mean anything and that they were just joking, but that, along with the physical evidence, was enough for the authorities to keep them in jail while the case was being put together. The only person not arrested was Harry's husband. Because there was no evidence against him, no text messages, no fingerprints, and the bite marks didn't match those on Maria's body. Luis, Harry, and Teodoro's defense argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive and that none of them were involved in the murder. Despite this, the 3 men were charged with the murder of Maria. Before the trial, Harry's lawyer requested that he be released and placed under house arrest for 2 reasons. First, due to Harry being 69 years old, staying in jail was risky. Second, he had difficulty walking due to recent knee surgery. The defense claimed he had been using a cane for a long time, and at the trial's start, he appeared in a wheelchair. Because of this request, he was placed under house arrest and returned to the hotel where he was staying, and he couldn't leave the hotel. On September 13, 2022, the trial of Luis, Harry, and Teodoro began, where evidence against them was presented. The prosecution struggled to prove the involvement of Harry and Luis. They had text messages and bite marks on Maria's body as evidence. However, the bite marks couldn't definitively identify the murderer, they could only exclude suspects. All hotel employees were ruled out as suspects, but not these two, Harry and Luis. In contrast, Teodoro had the most evidence against him. There was a blood trail, and he had wounds inflicted by Maria during her self-defense, as his blood was found under her fingernails. Blood was also found on his shoes, watch, and cell phone, located in his room during the search. Given this evidence, only Teodoro Herrera Martinez was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to a lack of physical evidence. Many people believe that Luis and Harry were involved in the murder because the hotel security cameras mysteriously stopped working on the day it happened. This suggests that someone might have planned it. A hotel security guard was also suspected, but he and the other two individuals could not be arrested due to a lack of evidence. Strangely, the guard left for another country after the murder, even though the police asked him to attend the trial as a witness. There are several aspects of this case that suggest more people might be involved. For example, two guests told the police that the hotel experienced a power outage for many hours on the night of the murder, which may have been intentional. This could have been done to disable the security cameras and the magnetic keys. A peculiar detail is that 9 days after the murder, investigators searched Harry's private office, which may have given him enough time to destroy any evidence. They not only analyzed text messages but also looked at Luis and Harry's social media accounts, where they discovered discussions about an idea directly related to how to find Maria's body. Legally, Harry and Luis are presumed innocent. The only person in prison for this murder is Teodoro Herrera Martinez, who is awaiting a new trial to see if his sentence can be reduced. Although the case is solved, but the Maria family suspects something is being hidden. They suspect a defense or cover-up. The family reported that the authorities returned Maria's belongings soaked in blood, which they find puzzling because they wanted to preserve the evidence in case new information emerged. They are satisfied with Teodoro's conviction but not with the acquittal of Harry and Luis. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Dio Goncalves. Albufeira, a beautiful resort town, is one of the most visited places in the Algarve region of southern Portugal. It was there, in 1999, that Diogo was born. He is the only child of a poor but hard-working family whose income mainly depended on the of tourism. Diogo's parents saw him as a good son, and those who knew him described him as decent, responsible, hard-working, and reliable. He was also a very outgoing young man who loved being surrounded by friends and family. Diogo went to high school in his hometown. After graduating, he started studying computer science. To fund his education and support his family, he got a job at McDonald's in 2015 when he was just 16. At 17, while still working there, his life became miserable when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state, as reported by the media. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were dealing with his father's health crisis, another tragedy struck. His mother, who had always supported his learning and growth, was hit by a car on her way to work at the mall, where she cleaned. The car dragged her several meters, leading to her falling into a ditch where she died from her injuries. Although the driver fled, but the police identified him and he faced trial. While he was waiting for the conviction of the person responsible for his parents' suffering, Diogo needed to be transferred to a medical unit where he received the necessary care. His maternal aunt, worried about his situation, had suggested that he move in with her. However, they had a serious disagreement, and after a few weeks, it became impossible for them to continue living together. Diogo explained what was happening to his friend, who offered him a room in his house in the Aldea neighborhood, also in Albufeira. At the time, the closeness to the friend's relatives helped Diogo feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo demonstrated great ability to handle and overcome difficult situations with patience and optimism. In 2017, at just 18 years old, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Vila Vida Park, a leading 5-star hotel. His impressive work led the executives to offer him a position as a technician. In 2018, Diogo accepted the offer and left his job at a fast food restaurant chain, where he had worked for nearly a year and had become a duty manager. This thing a new chapter in his life, filled with opportunities to advance after overcoming difficult times. After working at the company for some time and anticipating better days ahead, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his co-workers, especially Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old security guard at the hotel. Maria, like Diogo, comes from a family with difficult circumstances and faces her own challenges. Her mother had mental health issues, and her father left when she was very young. She never spoke to him again. Maria, interested in martial arts, practiced karate and aspired to be a police officer. However, her application to the police academy was rejected due to her tattoo. Disappointed, she decided to study at Securinfo, a company that trains security guards in various private security fields. Diogo was interested in Maria and made his feelings known from the start, but she did not feel the same way and treated him coldly. Fabio Acosta, a close friend of Diogo, said that Diogo was deeply in love with Maria. He was so infatuated that he declined a well-paying job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he didn't want to be away from her. Additionally, he would bring her meals when she was working. Over time, they became very close, and people around them assumed they were a couple. However, there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo she didn't want anything to do with him because she had just ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, yet she was still giving him false hopes. Diogo never gave up hope for a future with Maria and sought opportunities to be near her and make her happy in various ways. One day, he was deeply disappointed when he saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he believed she should have told him that she wasn't interested in men and that this was why they could never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, tried to reassure him by saying that girls often do this, but Diogo was not convinced. He insisted that she had lied to him and that was why she had rejected him. Despite the disappointment, Diogo and Maria stayed friends, and she continued to accept his gifts and invitations for dates. Several times, Diogo offered to walk her home, but she always said her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to bring another man into the apartment. As time went on, in December 2019, Diogo learned that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the payment amount of up to €70,000, Diogo decided it was time to buy a house to avoid continuing to pay rent. He shared the good news with his friend Maria, who left her job at the hotel a few weeks later. Maria stated that she could no longer stand the colleagues' comments about the relationship between her and Diogo. She also explained that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed a lot of attention due to a mental illness. At that moment, there was no reason to doubt her words. However, subsequent incidents suggest that her decision to leave the hotel was motivated by dark reasons, and this is where the third character in the story, Mariana Fonseca, 20 years old, comes in. Mariana worked as a nurse at the hospital and had a dear relationship with Maria. They both lived together in Mariana's parents' house, because they still do not have enough money to have their own home where they could enjoy their relationship. When Maria discovered the substantial amount of money Diogo, she started getting closer to he. It seems Maria shared this information with Mariana, and they decide to trick Diogo in order to gain access to his bank account and steal the compensation money. After Maria repeatedly refused to date Diogo, one day, she told him she wanted to spend a romantic evening with him. This was a significant surprise for Diogo, who was overjoyed and couldn't believe his luck. After waiting for so long, he was ecstatic about finally being with the girl he loved. They planned the meeting for Friday evening, March 20, 2020. Diogo was thrilled and didn't question why Maria had suddenly changed her mind. Maria and Mariana had different accounts of the incident that day, but here are the facts according to media reports based on official information. When Diogo entered, Maria offered him some orange juice she had brought. However, the drink contained an unexpected ingredient, diindawomethane, DIM, a drug affecting the central nervous system, with analgesic and sedative properties. Maria using the drug, which she had stolen from the hospital. Her plan was to sedate Diogo, access his banking information, and manipulate his fingers to unlock his phone. Mariana waited in a car outside while Maria executed the plan. Mariana even texted she several times to check if the drug had taken effect, as it was taking longer than expected. The situation inside the house became increasingly more tense. Diogo didn't understand what was happening and started to feel anxious. Maria then tries to calm him down by promising to show him an erotic dance, but first she has to tie him to a table. After being restrained for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to release him, but she became aggressive, leading to a struggle. Using her martial arts skills, she subdued Diogo by knocking him to the floor and choking him, prevent him from breathing. According to Mariana's testimony, Maria later instructed her to enter the apartment. Upon entering, Mariana found Diogo on the floor. She questioned Maria about the incident and criticized her for going beyond their plans, which was to steal his keys and take his money. Seeing Diogo unresponsive, Mariana began resuscitation efforts. When he woke up, he was extremely agitated and attempted to attack she. It seems he realized that Mariana was plotting against him, led him to try to defend himself. In response to Diogo's aggression towards Mariana, Maria intervened by grabbing him from behind, bringing him to the ground, and restraining him by squeezing his neck again. Diogo's life ended tragically at the hands of the girl he loved, Maria. His body was found in the living room of Maria and Mariana's house, where they continued with their planned robbery. They first severed his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, access a mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process took several days because there was a limit on the amount that could be transferred each day. When he learned that Diogo had work scheduled the next day, Mariana and Maria tried to prevent his colleagues from noticing his absence, searching for him, and reporting him missing. One of Diogo's colleagues received a text from his number stating that he couldn't make it to work that day and needed someone to cover for him. Diogo's colleague, who disliked last-minute shift changes, found the request odd. Diogo asked if everything was okay and received a simple yes in response. The conversation among Diogo's co-worker and others continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but the unusual messages increasingly seemed uncharacteristic of him. One person receiving these messages was Diogo's supervisor. One message said that Diogo wouldn't be returning to work because he had met a woman in France and planned to move in with her. This explanation seemed odd to the supervisor because Diogo was a responsible employee and wouldn't leave his job so abruptly. To find the answer, the supervisor attempted to call Diogo but received no answer. Later, he got a message stating that Diogo was not in to talk on the phone. The supervisor responded, saying he could only feel reassured if they spoke. He wanted to hear Diogo's voice and wanted to know what was happening. Diogo's loved ones reacted to messages sent by Maria and Mariana, in which they pretended to be Diogo. This prompted they to alter their plan for explaining Diogo's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it appear as if Diogo had ended his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later mentioned that their actions were inspired by the TV show Dexter, featuring a forensic scientist who killed criminals and disguised his crimes by dismembering their bodies. After executing their horrific plan, Mariana and Maria placed Diogo's body in trash bags in the trunk of their car. They then went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where they were seen hugging and laughing on security cameras. Following this, they returned to Mariana's home to begin dismembering Diogo's body. Ultimately, they put Diogo's torso in a black bag and discarded the other parts in a container. Meanwhile, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him as missing and reached out to the authorities. The authorities then waited the required 48 hours before officially declaring him missing. Mariana and Maria left the house, with Maria getting into Diogo's car to drive to a cliff near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. Mariana followed behind in her own car. Around 2 p.m. that day, Mariana threw Diogo's torso off the cliff and abandoned his car nearby. They planned to make it seem like he had jumped voluntarily. However, instead of falling into the sea, the remains got stuck on a rock. Finally, Mariana and Maria drove together in Mariana's car for about 12 minutes, covering 7 kilometers, to the Inferno Dago waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of the rest of Diogo's body in the water. Shortly after, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. A newspaper report stated that 2 laptops were found inside the car, led forensic police to investigate. A land and sea search was launched, leading to the discovery of a young man's torso partially covered by a black garbage bag. Meanwhile, at another location along the coast, a French couple found the young man's head at Inferno Toigo. Diogo's hands and feet were later recovered during an intensive police search. The investigators assigned to the case found the details surrounding Diogo's death unusual. They noted that he was a quiet man who don't hang out with bad people. As the police continued their investigation, they discovered that Diogo had received a significant payout following his mother's death. While examining money orders, they found that a large sum had been transferred from Diogo's account to someone named Maria. Naturally, the detectives' next move was to locate Maria to understand why she had received money from Diogo. Maria attempted to persuade the police that she killed Diogo in self-defense, claiming he was trying to abuse her. She stated that this was why she had left the hotel prior to the incident. However, a review of the text messages between Diogo and Maria, they showed that her claims were false. After Maria stopped working, she and Diogo grew close. During her initial meeting with the police, Maria insisted that she was entirely responsible for planning and carrying out the incident that led to the shooting. Maria clarified that Mariana was not involved in the crime at all. However, Mariana's account of the incident contradicted what Maria's claimed. Mariana reported that Maria to wanting to steal Diogo's money and intended to kill him. She stated that Maria's plan was to make him suffer in order to extract his bank account password. Investigators gathered enough evidence to convict both girls, Mariana and Maria, including phone records, the Diogo's cell phone, and ATM surveillance footage. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and faced court in June of that year. The judge carefully reviewed the incidents that Maria described. Maria remained steadfast in her confession and denied any involvement Mariana's. She stated that Diogo's body was in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and it was there that the dismemberment took place, while Mariana's family was sleeping. After hearing Maria's detailed testimony about the incidents, the judge repeatedly asked her Mariana was during the dismemberment, as which had been done with surgical precision at the joints. All attention in the courtroom turned to the nurse, Mariana. She anticipated the questions and clarified that, since everyone was aware of her employment at the hospital, they mistakenly thought she was responsible for dismembering the corpse. She said that dismemberment could easily be done by using information on the internet. The judge imposed a detention order on both Mariana and Maria, citing that they had committed a serious crime in a creepy, calculated, reckless, and extremely brutal manner. A few months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial began. During her testimony on February 26, 2021, Maria claimed that she initially wanted revenge on Diogo because he had abused her, but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him and clarified that Mariana had no relationship with Diogo. Mariana and Maria attended court together but did not make eye contact during the trial. It is rumored that after the arrest and subsequent jail time, they decided to end their friendship. The trial included testimonies from several witnesses, including forensic expert Teresa Costa. She explained that the level of diphenhydramine found in Diogo's blood was much lower than expected from the 3 ampoules, suggesting that he either did not take the prescribed dose or had taken it many hours before his death. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria Malvero was convicted of several serious crimes, including aggravated murder, destroy the body, robbery, unauthorized access, fraud, carjacking, and possession of an illegal weapon. As a result, she received a 25-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana Fonseca, on the other hand, was acquitted of murder but found guilty of destroy the body, complicity, and fraud. She received a 4-year prison sentence but was released because none of her convictions required pre-trial detention, at least until the final sentencing. The court determined that Mariana's effort to save life Diogo indicated that she did not intend to kill him. The judge based his decision on a confession from she, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. However, this verdict was not accepted by the Portuguese public, who viewed Mariana as equally guilty of the serious crime against Diogo alongside Maria. After the verdict, Mariana exited the courtroom through a separate exit where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting. Neither of them spoke to the media. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Polly Klaas. Polly Hannah Klaas was born on January 3, 1981, in Fairfax, California, USA. Her family included her father Mark, mother Eva, and younger sister Annie. After her parents' divorce when she was very young, Polly and Annie lived with their mother in Petaluma, California. As for Mark, he had a new relationship after the divorce, and Polly got along very well with this woman. Overall, their family was very harmonious, and she spent time with both her mother and father, with no problems between them. Polly was a quiet and innocent child who had a few close friends but was generally very shy. However, she found confidence and joy in theater, participating in various school plays and community musicals where she often took the lead role. Her main aspiration is to become a talented musical theater actress. Aside from theater, Polly loves hosting and attending sleepovers with her friends, a regular activity shared among her close-knit group. On October 1, 1993, Polly asked her mother if she could have 2 friends, Jillian and Kate, over for a sleepover. Her mother agreed, and the 2 friends arrived at Polly's house in the afternoon. They had dinner together, and the evening went smoothly until Polly's mother went to bed around 9:45 p.m. due to a bad headache. She told the girls that she was going to sleep and asked them to wake her up if they needed any help at any time. After taking 2 sleeping pills, she fell into a deep sleep. The calm night was disrupted after 11 p.m. when Eva, Polly's mother, was jolted awake by the screams of Jillian and Kate. The 2 girls frantically told her that a man had broken into the house and taken Polly away. Eva made an emergency call to the police and then went to check on her other daughter, Annie, who was in her room, seemingly unaware of the incident. When the police arrived, they started questioning Polly's 2 friends, Jillian and Kate. The girls explained they were in a room, select on a Halloween costume and just having fun. As the night wore on, around 11 p.m., Polly suggested it was time to go to bed, and her friends agreed. She offered to get the inflatable bed she and her mom had set up earlier so the 3 could sleep together. However, when Polly opened the door to her room, a man was standing in front of them, holding a knife and not wearing a mask. Since Halloween approached, Three girls initially thought man's threatening claims were a prank and burst into laughter. However, the man's facial expression quickly turned to anger, causing them to realize the situation was more serious. He swiftly forcing the girls into a room, where he bound their hands and feet with rope. When questioned about who lived in the house, all three girls, including Jillian and Kate, provided the same answer: Polly. Next, the man removed the pillowcases from the pillows and placed them over Jillian and Kate's heads, preventing them from seeing. He instructed the girls to count up to 1,000, assuring them that he would temporarily take Polly away but return her shortly. Unbeknownst to the man, the girls peered through gaps in the pillowcases and noticed his swift departure. Then, they attempted to release themselves from the restraints. After about 30 minutes of struggle, they managed to break free. Upon escaping the room, they immediately sought out Eva to inform her that her daughter Polly had been taken by the man. Jillian and Kate provided the police with a detailed account of the events. They also gave a brief description of the man, who had not worn a mask and covered his face, allowing the girls to get a clear look at him. As a result, the police were able to create a sketch of the suspect to aid in the search. The investigation at Polly's house did not yield much evidence. Several footprints were found, but they all belonged to Polly, her family members, or friends who had visited the house recently. However, some unusual fibers were discovered on the carpet, which did not match the carpet in Polly's house. Further analysis revealed that these fibers likely came from the carpet of a vehicle. The police then analyzed the cars of individuals who were known to the family and had visited the house, but none of them matched the fibers. This led to the assumption that the fibers were from the kidnapper's vehicle. A palm print was discovered at the scene. At that time, fingerprinting and DNA technology had not yet advanced to the point where it could be compared to a database. However, the print was preserved for potential future use if a suspect was later identified. In Polly's room, a piece of fabric resembling silk was also found. The fabric had a distinctive pattern and appeared to have been cut from a garment with scissors. The police believed this fabric could serve as a valuable clue in the future. A hair was discovered, but its origin remained unknown since DNA analysis was not advanced enough to thoroughly examine it at the time. Polly's case generated one of the largest searches in the United States at that time. Thousands of volunteers joined the search, with 4,000 people combing neighborhoods, vacant lots, and large estates near her home. The police also attempted to locate drivers matching the suspect's description, but all did not bring any results. The police had a narrow 24-hour window to locate Polly after her disappearance, as chances of finding her alive would significantly decrease beyond that time frame. To expedite the investigation, they handed the case over to the FBI and launched an urgent search. However, as the days went by, hopes of a safe recovery of Polly began to dwindle. During the investigation, police inquired about witnesses in the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen anything unusual on the night of the abduction. Several neighbors reported seeing a suspicious individual lurking around the area, describing him as peculiar looking. They didn't think much of it at the time because they had no reason to believe the man was capable of committing a serious crime like kidnapping. As a result, they failed to report the incident to the authorities. The police shared a sketch of the suspect with the neighbors, based on a description provided by Polly's friends. The neighbors all recognized the man in the sketch. In a separate investigation, the police also questioned the teachers and staff at Polly's school to see if anyone knew the man or had any information about Polly's disappearance. Unfortunately, no one at the school had any knowledge about the man or the incident surrounding Polly's disappearance. The staff members all had alibis for the time in question and none of them matched the description or resembled the sketch of suspects. The police have conducted a thorough and comprehensive investigation of the case, they comparing a fiber found in Polly's house to the car mats of teachers and school staff vehicles, but unfortunately, no matches were found. Over time, feelings of hopelessness and fear grew, not only for Polly's family but also for the authorities and the general public. Everyone is concerned about the threat this criminal may pose to society, so they demand that the police quickly solve the case. To gather more information, a $200,000 reward was offered to anyone providing information that could aid in locating Polly. This reward was funded by actress Winona Ryder, who also held a press conference to publicly appeal kidnapper for Polly's safe return. At the time, the internet was still in its early stages, and law enforcement agencies, including the police and the FBI, were unfamiliar with using the internet to locate missing persons. To assist in the investigation, 3 individuals from California took matters into their own hands. They created and posted a picture of Polly, a sketch of her suspected kidnapper, and an advertisement for a reward for any information that could lead to her safe return. Although social media platforms did not exist at the time, other online communication tools were available. As a result, approximately 25 million people in the United States viewed Polly's picture online. Initially, FBI investigators believed that the internet could play a crucial role in the investigation. Although the disappearance became increasingly well known, but internet users do not bring any valuable information. However, this has attracted many volunteers to help, and telephone switchboards were established with hundreds of information every day. This thing also brings hope in the families of other missing children, who reached out to Polly's family to support and assistance, hoping that by working together, they might be able to find their own missing children. The investigators were growing increasingly frustrated. It has been many weeks since Polly was kidnapped, and they had yet to uncover any leads. The identity of the kidnapper remained a mystery, and without any DNA evidence, they were unable to make a match. Not even a hair or palm print had been left found, leaving them feeling helpless. Finally, a new breakthrough in the case has come. A phone call was called to Polly's father, Mark. On the other end of the line, he heard a girl's voice that sounded uncannily like his daughter's. She claimed to be Polly and told Mark that she was being held at a hotel. The kidnapper had momentarily left her alone, and that's why she was able to contact he. However, before Mark could glean any more information, the girl hung up. Mark immediately rushed to the police station to tell the news. Unfortunately, the FBI at the time lacked the advanced technology to track a call that had already been disconnected. All they could do was wait anxiously for the kidnapper to make another move, so they can only sit and wait for a new call, hoping to trace it. A few hours after the first call, the same girl who had spoken to Mark called again. The police managed to trace the call, but found it odd that the location was not a hotel, as the girl claimed, but a residential neighborhood. When officers arrived and knocked on the door of the house where the call originated, they discovered it was a prank. It turned out a teenage girl, close to Polly's age, lived there, so their voices were similar. She explained that her friends had dared her to do it. The girl was not arrested or taken to the police station. Instead, her parents were advised to monitor her behavior and remind her not to joke about such serious issues. On November 28, 1993, nearly 2 months after Polly disappeared, police received a call from a woman. She reported that she found 3 suspicious items on a several-acre plot of land she owned. The police, along with the FBI, went to the location and found 3 critical pieces of evidence: a piece of silk identical to one in Polly's room, a pair of ballet shoes that Eva claimed were missing from the house the night Polly vanished, and some duct tape. These evidence led the police to suspect that Polly might have been in the area. Before all this evidence was discovered, on the day Polly disappeared, the same woman went to the police to report a problem. Strangers had been wandering onto her plot of land. She owned a lot of land, which was mostly forest, and had only one small house inside. Although there were signs indicating it was private property, there was no fence to keep people out, so many unknowingly crossed onto her land. Although her land had many intruders, but one particular out in her memory. On the night Polly was abducted, a man drove up to her house in his car, which got stuck in the mud. The nanny, who was caring for the woman's son, was the first to notice the man but didn't approach him because she was too scared. The homeowner also didn't approach him, as she thought he looked angry. They decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they interrogated the man about why he was there. He explained that he hadn't realized it was private property and promised to leave quickly. However, he requested their assistance in getting his car out of the mud. The officers noticed that the man seemed very nervous, scared, and sweaty, and he also appeared to be under the influence of drugs. Since they were unable to conduct a drug test at the time and the man was not acting aggressively, they were unable to arrest him. The officers helped him out of the mud, and he eventually drove away. This man was Richard Allen Davis, born in 1954 in San Francisco, California. His childhood was troubled due to the violence inflicted by his parents. When he was 12, his parents separated. His mother completely disowned him, saying she wanted nothing to do with him, and left him with his father. Richard's father was very irresponsible, often leaving the house for hours or even days. Richard was frequently left alone, sometimes staying with neighbors and sometimes staying with some of his relatives. During his teenage years, Richard began engaging in criminal activities such as stealing and fighting, which led to several months in reform school. At 17, Richard committed a violent robbery that almost resulted in the victim's death. The judge offered him a choice: go to reform school or join the U.S. Army. Richard chose the Army but was dishonorably discharged in less than 2 years. As he grew older, his criminal record grew longer. Around the age of 20, he was sentenced to 15 years for robbery and kidnapping, but was released after 1 year on parole for good behavior. During that period, Richard was troubled by another accusation. Many of his friends suspected him of killing a 19-year-old girl named Marlene, even though the police acknowledged that she had left voluntarily. However, those close to Marlene believed Richard was responsible for her death, occurring the night they attended a party together. These were merely rumors, with no evidence to support them. When Polly went missing, Richard was having a difficult time, and he had no fixed address, so his whereabouts were unclear. The police distributed a special leaflet exclusively to officers, urging them to be extremely cautious. They withheld information from the media due to concerns that Richard might flee California or even the United States. On November 13, 1993, Richard was arrested while driving under the influence of alcohol. A police officer stopped him, and he failed a breathalyzer test. Upon checking Richard's name and picture, the officer recognized him as the suspect wanted in the Polly kidnapping case. The officer carefully informed Richard that he was being arrested for violating probation due to drunk driving. Richard complied and was taken to the police station. There, officers read him his rights and revealed that he was actually being held for the kidnapping of Polly. Richard was taken in for questioning. The investigation was careful and he eventually admitted to kidnapping Polly. His palm print matched exactly with the one found at Polly's house, and carpet fibers from his car matched those found in the house. Polly's friends were brought to the police station for questioning and immediately identified Richard as the kidnapper. Additionally, a piece of silk identical to one found in Polly's room was discovered in his car and on the piece of land of the woman who reported the incident to the police. All evidence pointed to Richard, leading he to finally confess. He explained that he had been using substances with friends that day and felt unwell. He decided to break into a house in a neighborhood to commit a burglary. Richard drove around until he reached Polly's neighborhood. Seeing an open window, he entered the house. He stated that he hadn't planned the incident, didn't know Polly or her family, and hadn't been following them. He was searching for valuables but didn't find much. As he was about to leave, Polly opened the bedroom door and saw him. Richard noted that she was very frightened and, in his panic, decided to take her. He stated that he put Polly in his car and started driving, eventually stopping in a vacant lot where he assaulted her. Afterwards, he got back into the driver's seat. When the woman and the babysitter spotted Richard on private piece of land, Polly was in the back seat. Police officers helped him retrieve his car from the mud, and at that point, Polly was still alive, which deeply frustrated officers as they believed her life could have been saved. After the car was pushed out of the mud, Richard drove down the highway, strangled Polly to death, and left her body there. Richard reported the exact location of the grave to the police, leading to a search that took place on December 4, 1993, 2 months 3 days after the girl was abducted. Polly's body was found in a grave beside the highway, dug by Richard himself. The forensic examination mainly confirmed the cause of death as strangulation, consistent with Richard's account. The date of her death was approximately the same day she disappeared. With all the evidence, Richard Allen Davis was put on trial for kidnapping, murdering, and raping Polly Klaas. During the trial, Richard had a chance to speak. Besides apologizing to the family, he accused Polly's father of sexually abusing her. Richard claimed that Polly had told him not to do to her what her father did to her. This accusation enraged Polly's father, who nearly attacked Richard, but the people present compartmented him. Richard's words shocked everyone, not only because he didn't apologize, but also because they doubted the truth of his claim about Polly's father. On June 18, 1996, Richard Allen Davis was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Polly Klaas. In August, he was sentenced to death. He tried to overturn the death sentence but failed. In 2006, Richard overdosed on pills in his cell but was revived and returned to prison. In 2009, his lawyer attempted to appeal his conviction to the Supreme Court but was unsuccessful. The Supreme Court upheld his death sentence. Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Chelsea Brooke. A party for 1,000 people seems like the perfect place to enjoy the festive atmosphere and have fun. However, horrors sometimes lurk just outside, bringing with them unsolved mysteries and hauntings. Chelsea Brooke was born in 1992 in Trenton, Michigan, USA. Her mother, Leanda, worked at a bank, while her father, Matthew, was a farmer. She is the youngest of 5 children. Chelsea has 3 older sisters, Jennifer, Megan, and Cassandra, and a brother named Nathaniel. She is especially close to Cassandra, who is only 2 years older than she is. But all of her siblings share a close and loving relationship. Chelsea's family exemplified a typical American household. They lived in a small town with a population of about 500 people, where everyone knew each other and crime rates were very low. Growing up on a 65-acre farm established in 1875 by her great-grandfather, Chelsea was raised in a supportive, religious environment with strong moral values. Her family also had been involved in agriculture for 4 generations. Chelsea attended a Christian school, where she spent her free time studying Catholic scriptures. Later, she transferred to Monroe Secondary School, which focused on sports, cheerleading, and football. After finishing her education, Chelsea continued to live on the farm with her parents and her sister, Cassandra. During this time, her older sisters got married and moved out. Chelsea had a passion for cooking and intended to attend culinary school to become a chef to gain experience. She took a job at a nearby restaurant called Olga's Kitchen, where she worked as an administrator and felt very happy in her role. Chelsea was a friendly, sociable, and attractive young woman. She loved to express her individuality, often dyeing her hair bright colors like pink and getting a small anchor tattoo behind her ear. When grown up, she maintained a close relationship with her parents. She didn't have a driver's license and wasn't particularly interested in getting one, as her parents always helped her with transportation. By the time she turned 22, she had worked for 4 years and developed a close circle of friends with whom she regularly connected. Chelsea loved going to parties, and one of her favorites was a rock concert organized by a local musician named Mike on his farm. Over the years, what started as a small gathering grew into a well-known event, attracting around 1,000 people, including attendees from neighboring states. Mike had his own band and also invited other local performers this year. The concert was themed for Halloween and scheduled for October 25, 2014. In Newport, Michigan, which is about half an hour from Ferndale, Chelsea was excited about this big event and planned to attend with her friends Becky Brinson and Laura Taylor. At the event, Chelsea and her friends planned to dress as Poison Ivy from the Batman universe. Chelsea created the costume herself, using a swimsuit as the base and adding various details. After many nights of hard work, the final result was impressive. She crafted a costume that looked original and was worthy of first place. On Saturday, October 25, 2014, the friends gathered for the party. Laura drove them to the party, and they decided not to go home right after the event. Chelsea, now 22 years old, she intended to spend the night at Laura's place. She packed her things and set out for a fun evening. She plans to arrive at the concert around 10 p.m. However, it was still early, and the event had not yet started. Preparations were still in progress, but already hundreds of guests had gathered. Eager for a large-scale party, everything seemed well organized. There were several food and drink vendors, security guards ensuring safety, and parking appeared secure. The girls, who had attended this event before, could not have imagined that this time it would turn into a nightmare. After parking the car, they walked toward the concert venue. Since Chelsea's costume had no pockets, she had to leave her mobile phone in the car to avoid losing it. Nearly 1,000 people attended the event, many dressed in elaborate costumes. Alcohol was abundant, and some attendees were under the influence of illegal substances. These things created a lively atmosphere. Most of the people were unknown to the girls, who had gathered from different cities, but there were several familiar faces. Penny and her sister Heather. The group had a strong bond, having known each other for many years, even though Penny was 10 years older than Chelsea and had her own children. They all felt the energy of the event and enjoyed it. When the rock concert finally began, everyone reveled in the loud music. Chelsea and her friends quickly immersed themselves in the lively atmosphere. They happily drank and danced with everyone. However, because they were too excited to play, Chelsea and her friends lost each other. The situation was further complicated because all the girls were tipsy and disoriented by the noise and chaos of the party, making it hard for them to keep track of everything. Laura tried to locate her friend but was unsuccessful. Becky and Laura weren't overly concerned because there were many acquaintances at the party. They assumed Chelsea was with someone from her circle and would get a ride home later. Around 1 a.m. on October 26, Laura decided to leave the party and go home. Unable to find Chelsea in the crowd, Laura gave Chelsea's personal belongings to Becky and asked permission to leave first. Becky woke up early the next morning. Aware that none of her friends had plans for that Sunday, they all assumed they would sleep off the effects of the night before. She tried to call Chelsea's mother to inform her that she had Chelsea's things but couldn't get through. She went about her day, and later in the evening, Chelsea's sister, Cassandra, messaged her to say that Chelsea still hadn't come home. Becky responded that she was spending the night at Laura's place. Everyone felt relieved, thinking Chelsea was safe. But when Chelsea still hadn't returned by Monday, it raised concern. Chelsea's relatives reached out to Laura, but they hadn't heard from Chelsea either. They began contacting all their friends who had attended, and find that none of them had seen Chelsea since they lost track of each other that night. Chelsea hadn't communicated with anyone and don't post anything on social media, which heightened her family's concern. In a state of panic, they went to the Monroe County Police Station to report Chelsea missing. Initially, the police were reluctant to take the case because Chelsea was an adult, 22 years old, who had the right to make her own decisions, including leaving without informing her family. However, her relatives insisted that a search for Chelsea be initiated. Her mother feared that something terrible had happened to her. Immediately after that, detectives began looking into the circumstances surrounding Chelsea's disappearance and defined a search area between Newport and her family farm. As the search efforts continued, detectives sought the assistance of Mike, a rock performer and party organizer, and brought him in for questioning. He agreed to come to the police station to provide his account. Mike was not well acquainted with Chelsea and claimed he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. He did not arouse any suspicion, so he was allowed to go home. The detectives then spoke with the security guards who were present at the event. They stated that they hadn't noticed anything unusual. However, Chelsea's relatives suspected that Mike knew more than he was letting on, so they went directly to his house in search of information about their daughter. They intrusively entered his property, where the party had taken place, and began searching for clues themselves when tensions escalated quickly. Mike permitted law enforcement to enter his area, wanting to avoid any implication of wrongdoing despite the organized search. The authorities found nothing relevant to the investigation. There were no leads. The detectives continued to interview attendees of the Halloween party, but it proved challenging to gather information, as it was a costume event where everyone wore masks and consumed alcohol. These were young people eager to make a name for themselves as a result of their conversations with the party guests. The detectives received hundreds of conflicting statements. Many of these claims were difficult to verify and took a considerable amount of time to investigate. Most of the information turned out to be false, likely due to confusion among people, however. Some individuals seem to purposely exaggerate their stories to gain attention. Some of the statements are completely absurd. One partygoer claimed that a girl could have been kidnapped for slavery, while another suggested that a satanic ritual was taking place. With the possibility of someone being burned alive, the case quickly gained widespread attention. Information, rumors, and falsehoods spread rapidly among local residents. The media was filled with alarming headlines, including wild speculations about victims of satanic rituals. This situation deeply affected the family of Chelsea and Mike, despite the outrageous nature of some claims. The police had to investigate all theories presented by the guests. They discovered that there had indeed been a fire near the stage, reaching heights of 15 to 20 meters. After examining the area, they confirmed that no human remains were found. Ruling out the possibility of ritual murder, the search lasted several days and involved many volunteers, but no evidence was discovered. The friends of Chelsea felt responsible for her disappearance since they had left her alone that night and hadn't begun searching for her earlier. They kept a close eye on her social media accounts, hoping to find clues about Chelsea's whereabouts since she was alone. Her boyfriend was not considered the main suspect, however. The police interviewed all the young men who had any connection to Chelsea in recent years, searched their cars, and collected DNA samples from those individuals. During this time, rock singer Mike allowed a command center for the search operation to be set up on his farm and supported the police in every way he could. He even provided a generator so the search team could have electricity. A tent camp was established for volunteers and those concerned about Chelsea's disappearance, including her family and friends. The search for Chelsea continued almost around the clock. But there was little progress, despite the warm welcome and extensive help Mike provided to the investigation. Detectives remained suspicious of him. This was mainly due to his reluctance to communicate, which led them to believe he was hiding something. However, it was understandable why he felt this way, given the intrusive nature of the police presence on his property. Ultimately, all of Mike's belongings were searched, but nothing incriminating was found. The police suspect him of involvement in the incident because, before, when the police arrived, Mike was tackled to the ground, and they even threatened to shoot his dog. The reason for this incident was that when the police arrived, they found Mike covered in blood. It was later revealed that he had gotten dirty while rescuing his dog, which had fallen into a trap and was badly injured. He had carried the animal out of the woods in his arms. Mike was primarily at fault for hosting a party without ensuring the safety of his guests. As a result, He faced criticism from Chelsea's family and the police. Detectives learned from Gavin Hewlett, who provided new details to the investigators. He mentioned that a girl in the poison ivy costume was also looking for her friends after she had gone missing. She approached other party guests, asking about Laura, but no one offered to help. Distressed, she started to cry, and Gavin offered her his cell phone around 1 a.m. Unfortunately, she was unable to reach anyone and only managed to borrow a small amount of money. Chelsea felt very sad about losing her friends and being left alone. She declined his offer for a ride. Witnesses from the party reported that Chelsea arrived at the parking lot but felt stranded. Her belongings, including her phone, were left in the car, leaving her unable to contact anyone or find her friends. Consequently, around 2:45 a.m., Chelsea walked onto the gravel road leading from the parking lot, hoping to find someone she knew for a ride home. Although several people offered her assistance, she chose to decline their help and continued walking alone. This was the last time anyone saw her alive. Many attendees recorded videos and took photos at the party. The police gathered all available materials from the partygoers and are now analyzing thousands of images and videos. Some witnesses mentioned a man selling t-shirts that night. They were searching for him not as a suspect, but as a potential witness who might have seen Chelsea. When officers located the t-shirt seller, he reported that he indeed saw a girl in a bright poison ivy costume, making her hard to miss. He gave to provide the police with some helpful information that a man wearing a sweatshirt and hoodie approached Chelsea, and they engaged in conversation around 3 a.m. She left with him. Their interaction seemed friendly, and they did not hug or flirt. This man was captured on multiple security cameras in the area. Using these recordings and the account of the t-shirt vendor, a forensic artist created a sketch of the man who may have been the last person to see Chelsea alive. This sketch was released to the media, along with a reward for any information that could assist in solving the case. The reward fund gradually increased from $5,000 to $30,000. Leaflets were widely distributed, and Monroe County was filled with photographs of Chelsea by that time. Approximately 300 leaflets had been handed out. Every community had posters featuring her photo, and the leaflets were even included with pizza deliveries. The police station began receiving calls from local residents with tips. Many leads were reported. Data was analyzed, and around 1,000 interviews were conducted. But none of this resulted in significant progress. A breakthrough in the case occurred in 2015, just before the new year, when a woman named Clare contacted the police department. She reported that her boyfriend had confessed to killing Chelsea. Clare had confronted her boyfriend, who threatened her with a knife, and during this confrontation, he revealed that it was the same knife he used to kill the girl in the poison ivy costume. She managed to escape from him as he intended to chase her and her child. When knowing about the high-profile case of Chelsea's disappearance, Clare wanted to assist in the investigation. The police were suspecting that the caller might be seeking revenge. As similar cases had occurred in the past, however, they could not completely disregard her call, so they decided to investigate during their inquiries. They discovered that the report was false. Clare being one of 2 people arrested by the police, evidence showed that she was indeed a former acquaintance of Chelsea. The second individual detained was Harlan, a 19-year-old who claimed he intervened in a situation where 2 men were harassing Chelsea. He said attempting to rescue her before she was pulled into the fields. Later, Harlan confessed that his story was fabricated, and then the police received another call on March 22, 2015. A woman was cleaning her yard after winter when she found a red leather shoe. Without thinking, she discarded it in a garbage bag. Later that evening, her husband noticed the shoe and inquired about it. She explained how she found it while cleaning. He suggested that the shoe might be linked to Chelsea's disappearance, as she had been last seen wearing red shoes. Their home was located 7 kilometers from the party. Police had previously searched this area multiple times, and the couple was shocked that the searchers had overlooked the distinctive red shoe Confused by the situation, she contacted the police to report her discovery. When officers arrived, they examined the area and the shoe. They confirmed that it closely resembled one belonging to the missing Chelsea. However, they found nothing else nearby. It turned out that this area had not been thoroughly searched before. The searchers were pressed for time and could not conduct a proper investigation before winter set in, and the snow later covered any potential evidence. As a result, the search was essentially ineffective. Soon after, another significant find was made. On the 15th, Eric Kassap was collecting scrap metal with friends when he stumbled upon a red wig while sorting through some debris near the railroad tracks. This wig was identical to one Chelsea had worn on the night she disappeared. Initially, Eric did not contact the police. Although he was aware of the missing girl, he had not paid attention to her accessory. A week later, he saw another news report about the search for Chelsea wearing the same outfit and realized that his discovery might be more important than he had first thought. He began to suspect it could indeed be linked to her disappearance. Despite his initial hesitation, he did not report the discovery to the police right away because he was worried that his DNA might be on the costume. He eventually told his sister about the costume, and she insisted that he inform the police. A week later, Eric reported the items he had found to the sheriff's department. The police went to the location he specified and discovered a carnival costume and Chelsea's wig. As a result, Eric became the main suspect. He shared all the necessary information with the police, including his DNA samples, and maintained that he had never met Chelsea. The investigators pressed him for details, but he continued to deny any involvement. Eric agreed to take a polygraph test and passed it successfully. Meanwhile, forensic experts examined the outfit. They found that the straps had been torn off, indicating that someone had forcibly removed them from the girl, and the leggings were completely ripped. A forensic analysis of the poison ivy suit revealed brown stains that resembled blood. Further testing confirmed that the stains were indeed blood and belonged to Chelsea. By that time, over 1 million flyers had been distributed, but there was still no significant progress in the case. On April 24, 2015, John Markin was preparing his 5-hectare plot, which was densely forested. For construction, this location was close to where Chelsea's clothes had been discovered and not far from the site of a nearby rock concert. During the construction work, a bulldozer became stuck in a muddy area. When the driver got out to investigate, he observed what looked like a human skeleton. He alerted the other workers, who confirmed it was indeed a badly decomposed human body without a face. Construction was immediately halted, and the frightened workers contacted the police. The driver informed the dispatchers that he had found human remains. John suspected it might be Chelsea, who was the focus of an extensive search in the vicinity. A piece of the remain clothing had been found, and the remain had light hair. When police to arrive at the scene, where they discovered a remain hidden in the underbrush and covered with branches and leaves, right away, they were sent for forensic examination, and dental records were used to identify the body as that of Chelsea. The forensic expert concluded that Chelsea suffered a brutal death. Her murder was particularly cruel. Her jaw was severely disfigured, literally broken in two, and the bones around her eyes and nose were crushed. Many of her teeth were also knocked out. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury from a strong blow with a blunt object. Additionally, evidence indicated that she had been abused before her death. DNA from the perpetrator was found on Chelsea's body and entered into the police database. But there were no matches. Due to the poor condition of the body, more information could not be obtained. Therefore, the investigation for some time reached a dead end until 2016. When a DNA match was found in the police database, it belonged to Daniel Clay from Monroe County. His DNA was included in the database due to issues related to child support. Daniel had a troubled childhood. His mother was incarcerated shortly after his birth, and he was raised by foster parents in a local orphanage. He later developed a substance abuse problem after failing to secure stable employment. one of his former girlfriends became pregnant, but he denied paternity and did not provide child support. Daniel had a history of criminal behavior, harassment of women, and banned substance trafficking. Yet for some reason, his DNA had not been collected for the police database until now, on July 22, 2016. The police were driving the guy, who tried to escape but was caught. Daniel was taken in for questioning. Initially, he thought the police were investigating him for child support issues, but the detectives quickly shifted the focus to Chelsea's murder. He admitted to being at that Halloween party, but said he left early and denied having any connection to Chelsea, claimed he had never seen her before. Of course, the police officer did not believe him, as posters of Chelsea were displayed everywhere, making it impossible for Daniel not to know about her disappearance. However, he could not explain how his DNA ended up on the clothes and body of Chelsea. Investigators started using more sophisticated techniques to gather information. They employed a good cop, bad cop approach, which led to changes in the suspect's story. He admitted that he had forgotten some details, but he claimed that at a party, he had intimate with an unknown girl. He described her as wearing some kind of suit and said he didn't get a good look at her. The suspect mentioned that he got into a car with her, and after their encounter, they parted ways. However, this statement is obtained because he mistakenly believed that male fluids were found on the remains. In fact, the police did not locate any such fluid, but they did find his skin cells on Chelsea's remains, and on the straps of the poison ivy suit. His DNA was also discovered on the leggings, which were torn along the seam. This evidence suggested that the act was not consensual, and the police had not informed him about any intimate contact with the victim. Only a small group of investigators was aware of this information. Daniel eventually admitted to the crime after the suspect changed his story multiple times. Initially, he completely denied knowing Chelsea and claimed he had not been with anyone that night. However, during another interrogation, his account shifted again. This time, Daniel stated that he did intimate with a girl he met while leaving the parking lot. She got into his car and started flirting with him, although he initially responded to her advances. He soon became aggressive during their encounter. She asked him to bite, hit, and strangle her. He complied and strangled her for several seconds. Afterward, he realized she was unresponsive despite his attempts to revive her. She had no pulse. In shock and panic, Daniel drove for about half an hour along forest roads, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, he disposed of her body in a remote area near an abandoned site. He could not explain why her clothes were found far from the body. Overall, his story was seen as absurd and unbelievable. Leading no one to trust his account, Daniel created an elaborate web of lies that ultimately led the police to lose patience and charge him with the murder of Chelsea. He claimed her death was an accidental result of a moment of passion, insisting on his innocence until the end. However, the medical examiner contradicted his claims, stating that the actual cause of death was a blow to the head from a blunt object, exposing his entire narrative as false. Daniel's girlfriend testified in court, saying she had never seen any signs of cruelty in him and found it hard to believe he could commit such an act. Meanwhile, another woman revealed that Daniel had confessed to her about the murder. The prosecutor argued that, on the night of the incident, Daniel spotted Chelsea walking alone and defenseless. He deceived her into getting into his car, then abused and brutally beat her to death. They was unable to clarify why the girl's suit and wig were found in one location. One shoe was found in another, and her body was discovered in yet another place. There were many unanswered questions in this case, but the key point is that Chelsea's body was recovered and the perpetrator was apprehended. To counter Daniel's false testimony, a special dummy was used to demonstrate how someone could be strangled for a few seconds right in front of the jury. It was shown that his claim was false because, in reality, it takes more than 3 minutes of pressure on the neck to cause death, which left a strong impact on the jury. Additionally, the prosecutor reiterated the injuries inflicted on Chelsea by Daniel. The brutality of the killer was evident in the manner in which he caused these injuries. It became clear that such a heinous act could not have been committed by chance. Daniel was found guilty of both abuse and murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 75 years for other acts of violence against women. Incredibly, Leanda surprisingly revealed in a media interview that she has forgiven her daughter's killer. She even gifted him a Bible, which he promised to keep.